Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 130th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, of course, it's a Monday, so we have a community submission. I know how to say that. And we have that one coming from Kosmycpurge. Again, we have another one from the infamous Cosmic. We have a creature, I'm going to call this a boss-type creature. He refers to it as a super boss, but that's not technically a classification, so I'm going to classify it as a creature, but a boss type creature. So we're really interested in this one because it does go into an area that I'm actually always kind of curious about in my personal life. But this is going to be the Gasha-Dokuro, which is the rattling skeleton, the translation from Japanese mythos. So yeah, we're going to be looking at the Gasha-Dokuro, which in more modern mythos of Japanese culture is now considered a yokai, but originally had a unique and different story behind it. But I digress. I'm really interested. I'm wondering how much is going to be more based on historic and what's going to be based more on the more modern tail ends. And I'm curious if we're going to see any influence from Attack on Titan. So those are just kind of my initial thoughts. But of course, we do have a couple updates. Yeah, how's it going, my dude? How was
Shalom?
I was gonna say, how was your
friends.
weekend, but I'd be like more like, how was your night, since you were here literally just yesterday.
That is very fair. Normally when we meet up, it's been a little bit, but not so much today.
Not so much today.
But no, it's pretty chill. I was super excited, super stoked. I was doing a lot of work on the write-up for the pop culture build that we finished doing yesterday, and so I really am excited to see how it actually ends up turning out. But yeah, it's I'm so excited to do more of these, and just like the little bit you and I were talking about beforehand, like it's phenomenal. It really is. So I'm here for it.
For those of you who don't know or who weren't around for the last week, we did our community stream yesterday. Got a little bit of a late start due to
power issues.
Going out like literally an hour before we were supposed to go live. But yeah, we had a very successful stream. We did our first pop culture builds. And again, we went a little bit of a unique way with it. Instead of just giving the one-to-one, broken game version, we tried to do as much as we could in more or less building a roadmap, as it were. Deciding what level the pop culture icon was going to be, and then building a roadmap to get there. In this particular case, we did Shazam. We did decide that Shazam, as represented, was a level 20, so we did do the full level 20 with it. But yeah, so at first we built a roadmap that basically just gives you, I can kind of, if you want to hold that for people real quick. Hold that right about there. So if you guys want to see a quick little snapshot there, basically just all of the details you would need to make Shazam in D&D, but not be the character Shazam. This is just the roadmap to get all of the D&D things that would, that would represent what Shazam actually is. So I think the next step, what Kage and I have been talking about off stream, is the next step we're going to do is we are going to publish the roadmap itself as one piece. So we're going to actually break this up into 3 pieces. So in the future, pop culture builds is going to kind of happen, and then we will hopefully have maybe 3 pieces of content for you guys to have after the fact. One is going to be the roadmap, which is kind of what we did on stream, which is showing, basically if you wanted to get to our design, what classes, what levels, how many in each class, and what specific feats, ASIs, or anything that you would need, and maybe some base stats. Following that, what Kage is going to do is he had some really great ideas, because this is all I want to do. I wanted to give people a roadmap to do a character based on icons, not give you guys a direct icon, not a one-to-one. So talking with Kage and trying to see what you guys were asking for in Discord, what we're also going to do is provide 2 character sheets as well as the roadmap. So the roadmap is going to be one piece that we're going to get, and the next piece is going to be 2 individual character sheets. One is going to be D&D accurate, and one is going to be icon accurate. So what that means is we will create, like in this particular case, highlight. In this particular case, we'll create, or Kage will create a level 20 character sheet of the Shazam that we built with the D&D accurateness. So we're just going to put in all of the things that included in our build. So we chose Dampier as the race. So technically that includes Vampiric Bite. That's not very Shazam-like, but it is D&D accurate.
Yes.
So we will have one character sheet that is D&D accurate to the build that we decided. And I think Kage will also fill in anything that we didn't decide. Like we didn't choose the specific spells that this character would have.
Didn't choose the specific proficiencies and skills and stuff like that.
And I wanted to build a roadmap with what is the bare minimum using the foundations and little homebrewing as possible to get us to the character. But I think you guys wanted a little bit more. So he's going to do that where it's going to be a D&D accurate with all of the fill-ins and all of the extra stuff. So you'll basically have a complete playable 20th level that's D&D accurate. But then we thought this could be a little bit more fun. Some people are going to want the one-to-one. They're going to want to be able, they want to play Shazam when they're done, right? So he's also going to go ahead and make a secondary character sheet, a level 20, but he's going to make it icon accurate. So in this particular case, we chose Shazam to be Dampier because of the no breathing, right? So it'll still be that on the character sheet, but Kage will remove the Vampiric Bite because that's not lore or icon accurate.
Yeah.
So we'll have two character sheets, one that is 100% accurate to D&D lore based on the things that we chose, and one will be altered as little but as much as necessary to make it 100% icon accurate. That may mean taking some things away or even adding some things that aren't quite 100% D&D, or he may have to add something that's not quite the class that we chose.
Like I might do something like in this example, I started drafting something up and there are certain cantrips that you get, and I look at it in multi-classing, like you get stupid amounts of cantrips. Like you get 4 cantrips for being a sorcerer just by taking 1 level, and you get 3 cantrips for taking a level in cleric,
which
right?
We've done.
Exactly. So we have what, 7 cantrips out the gate,
right?
You know, like that's a lot of cantrips.
And
so
my idea was to keep those open because the whole point was the roadmap, right? My original idea for this was to let that be on y'all's choice because it will be dependent upon your gameplay, right? Your campaign will choose what cantrips you should start out with. Your campaign and your party and the way that you guys develop will decide what order you did all this in. That's all I wanted to do, was get you how to get there. But we've realized that, yes, some people want to take this to one shot. Some people want to take it as the final, right?
As NPCs, like I want to do, because I need all of these things.
Or DMs might want to take it
exactly.
So we've definitely thought about it, and it's like, yes, we want to have what we built, right? Because we didn't want to do the whole, I made a joke about this, we didn't want to do the clickbaitiness of, Shazam's really a vampiric dragonborn,
right?
Like we didn't want to be that clickbaity. It was just, that's where it led us, right? Those were the races,
100%.
the classes, and the features that made this character as close to what we could represent. So there is going to be some D&D components that don't match up, and that will be cool for some people, but some people aren't going to like that. Some people aren't going to want to even see Vampiric Bite as an option because it's not who Shazam is.
And like you were saying a second ago, like there'll be like some potential small edits. Like I might turn something like Firebolt into Electric Bolt. So it's just, it'll change. Nothing really significant changes, but as basic as we can keep it, because again, we want to keep it as much to standard D&D rules, so you don't have to like break your game to like interact with it.
And we want this to be acceptable by, like, we want this for you to be able to take it, because I wanted the roadmap so you can go to any gameplay and without their consent, like we don't have to tell them I'm making Shazam. You can just do this because it's D&D law. But you might want to say, hey, can I run Shazam? And if they're cool with it, we want to be able to give you 2 playable character sheets to go with. So
100%.
Yeah,
I feel
that's where we're going with that. Is you'll have the roadmap no matter what level you start at. You'll have the roadmap to get all the way to level 20, or you'll at least have 2 different types of playable character sheets at level 20. Both Shazam, just one's D&D accurate to what we've decided, and then one's just going to be as much lore accurate as possible.
Right.
So yeah. I don't know how long that's going to take. It shouldn't take too long, but at the same time, there's going to be some formatting stuff. So keep an eye out on the Discord. If you guys aren't part of the Discord, link is in chat now. But Kage will probably post that when he's done.
Yes.
We will probably end up, once he's done and we review it, we'll probably end up creating a channel that's going to be specifically for that.
That would be a Pop Culture Builds channel. Very nice.
Yeah, because we do have a similar channel for, like, we have the thread for the pop culture ideas. but we might do a new channel specifically for the post.
Would it be would discussions be allowed in there? Like we just pin the pop culture build so people can like see them whenever they want to, but then like people can like talk about things inside there, or is that just mostly for display purposes?
I think it would be more for display because you don't want them to be lost as easily, and sometimes scrolling through pinned messages isn't as easy as just kind of seeing what's there. So I mean, we have so many other chat channels.
That's fair enough.
But yeah, I'll have to just decide what category it makes sense in. It's probably gonna go in community or public spaces. Probably in community, but yeah. We'll create a channel that you guys will be able to pull it'll probably be like a webhook because he's really good at those. But yeah, it'll just be like, the title of this. So this one will be Shazam, and then it'll have the roadmap, the D&D accurate, and a pop culture accurate version.
Links. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. I think that's going to be like the next big phase for when we do these episodes. We're both really, really excited to do more of these.
Hell yeah.
But at the same time, we have so many other episodes we want to do.
Yes.
Like,
can't get stuck on one thing.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't want you all to get too excited, but I'm not gonna lie. It's really making me reconsider, like, it's making me reconsider how many streams a month we should be doing. It's making me
right.
And
be like, yo, we might be able to sneak another one in here.
I'm just saying, like, I'm very tempted sometimes because we have so many cool ideas, and I just want to get to them. We just don't have the time.
For sure.
We don't have them.
Did we get a hydrate?
We did get a hydrate.
Oh, snap.
So let me.
So
we got hydrate. Yeah. All right, let's do it the right way. We got the smart water.
Wild.
Look at the smartness. All right. But other than that, you guys should see a poll in the Discord. Hopefully by the 1st, so by the end of the month for next month's stream, November's extra or a community stream that you all have already earned. And then, of course, we will reset the community stream for December if we're still able to do that. We have like a week to figure out and adjust our confirm our schedules to be able to do one in December. Yeah, I think that was it though. Other than that, yeah, everything's kind of just
gets most
rolling as normal. So yeah, we can kind of jump right in here. Kind of liking the song though.
Yeah, I'm very stoked we ended up getting some lo-fi up in here. For real.
I don't know. I mean, I think most people in chat have enjoyed the background music ever since it was added. I don't know how many people. There's only been a handful of people that I think have been here longer than we've had the music. I know Cosmic's been here since before we've had music. But I don't know how many other people have been here since before then. I've kind of forgotten how long we've been
here. Maybe Hecate?
Maybe. I literally do not know when we started doing music. It's just been that long that it's been over a year. Oh, wait, for you or that we've been doing music? We've been doing music over a year?
I don't think so. We definitely started it this year sometime.
I know Cosmic's been over a year for sure.
Yeah, Cosmic, 100%.
Hoylepa was probably here. And then, so Cosmic was here. Hoylepa was here when we didn't have music. Yes, what do you guys think? For those of you, I mean, I don't know, for anybody, whether you're here, you were here beforehand or not. Yeah, emote in the chat whether or not you guys think the music was a good addition. I like it. Especially for when I'm not talking and I have to research something. It's nice that it's not just dead.
Vibing with the jams.
All right. Let's take a look here. We can start. All right. Come on. There we go. All right. Here we are, everyone. And we are going to begin today's review. We have the boss type creature, the Gasha-Dokuro. All right, and if I understand correctly, the only thing that I know ahead of time, excuse me, when I lower that, the only thing I know up front is that we have 2 sections that we're going to be reviewing. Or
yes,
there are going to be 2 sections of this creature. First is the body, and then the other is the core.
Yes.
I don't know what that means. That's all I know is that we have 2 sections that we're reviewing, body and core. All right, so let us begin with Kosmycpurge's Gasha-Dokuro, creature of the boss type. So the Gasha-Dokuro body is colossal and an undead monstrosity. So colossal, is that
So
I'm
that is interesting because I'm not 100% sure if that's actually a standard size category. I
thought gargantuan, because it goes huge and then gargantuan, right?
Let me see if I can look it up real quick.
I thought it was large, huge, gargantuan. Not that that's where it ended. I mean, I know that there are like colossal like beings, but I don't know about like the category of beast, or if this is just intended as a semi-homebrew indication that it's bigger than anything that exists. Right.
So what I have is there's tiny, there's small, there's medium, there's huge, and then there's gargantuan.
Okay, huge, yeah. So,
and that's all I know of. Colossal, I'm assuming, would be a size up from that.
And what was gargantuan? How big is gargantuan?
Gargantuan is 16 squares.
So 16 squares.
So I'm guessing that's, what is that, a 4x4? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be a 4x4.
So that's like 20 feet tall.
Large is
like up to 20 feet, I guess.
Well, so it's 20 feet wide.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I always kind of equate that to the
roughly
ability of height, right?
Okay.
Because I mean, if you think about the average medium creature is between 5 and 6 foot.
Sure.
Cover the 5 foot
5 foot square. Yeah.
So
I
always kind of look at their square. One direction of square is
relatively height size.
Roughly a range of potential height. Okay. You know, spiders can take up 2 squares but are short.
Yeah.
But again, lengthwise, if you look at like, you know, a dire wolf, they're gonna tower above you, even though they take, you know, especially because they take up 2 squares. So I always just kind of give that as a general rule of thumb.
Okay,
it's okay to think that. But if we're looking at colossal, so I know that Gasha-Dokuro by what was it? It was weird. There's like two. It's weird. There's 2 different ways. The traditional way it's always done is it stands. What is it? 10 meters tall. I think is like the original was like 10 meters tall, or what was the other one I read? Like 15 times the average human. So the funny thing is,
for gargantuan?
No, for the Gasha-Dokuro by legend.
Oh, wow.
And what's interesting about that is I think I might be completely wrong here. Lore said 150 feet. I don't think that's accurate because from what I understand, the lore was only like 15 times the average human, or like I think it said like 10 meters tall, which is kind of like I think like anywhere between like 35 and 50 feet tall.
Interesting. Let me see if I can.
But again, like the Gasha-Dokuro has a very interesting collab. Like it has a lot of stuff that's been like collabed to make its lore. Like it has a lot of like different influences. So
right.
It is very interesting depending upon like which one that you look at. So
it does say my first search comes up at least 10 meters tall, and said to be 15 times larger than a human.
Right. And if you think about the average human being about 5'5", even 6 foot, you're looking at around 50, 60 feet, maybe 70 feet tall. But Cosmic's indicating this is 150 feet. So Colossal's to indicate 150 foot tall.
Wild.
So
wild. Okay.
So 150 feet in terms of like what the lore would say that's tall. But what would that equate to in squares? I mean, this has to be at least 10 squares then. Yeah.
So if we're looking at, see, because if 150 feet, like if taking your example, if the wide is relatively as tall, then if we're trying to go 150 feet, then we're going to need a lot of squares. Like that's a lightweight, like a 60 to 70 foot radius.
Yeah, that's huge. So Cosmic's saying a 5x5. So so I can't imagine that the 150 feet would work with. So that's 5x5.
Unless it's just all up. But I will say, so I don't know if you want to jump ahead to this, but there's a picture of art that he used as an example. Now the art, weirdly enough, this creature doesn't have legs.
Okay.
It looks like it's a torso and arms. So if that's what we're looking at, then it would make it would be very interesting if we can fit all of that 150 foot height in a 5x5.
With Cosmic's 5x5, that would that aligns much more with the traditional 10 meters or 15 times, because then you can justify a 5x5 holding something about 35 to 70 feet tall.
Yeah.
So
that would be a size up from Gargantuan.
So I agree with the 5x5. I think that fits 5x5 with roughly anywhere from, I would say, 35 to maybe a max, like, depending on, your situation, 35 to 75 feet tall would fit in a 5x5. Okay. Because I think once you get to around like that anywhere between 75 and 100, you're starting to wonder if that can fit in a 5x5. Because even like, structurally speaking, how is it moving without falling over, right? Like, it's because you think of like a toothpick, upgrade a toothpick to a 5x5, it's still so tall it would still fall over, right? Yep. So that's what I'm trying to think of. But I think a 5x5 works for that. So colossal, slightly of a homebrewed size, but I do think that we are missing a couple larger sizes. Like I do think the standard sizes don't really fit everything.
It doesn't encompass everything,
so
for sure.
I'm okay with the 5x5. I think that's actually good for a new type of creature, especially for like a boss type.
Especially a boss like this, yeah.
You definitely want something that's going to be a little bit crazy. Some depictions of the lower said the half weight is too heavy for the lower half to handle. It's also why the body only has 5 feet of movement. Okay. That's interesting. So we have an armor class of 22, 5 foot thick natural bone armor. So I don't know any other, off the top of my head, I don't know most creatures that have over like a natural AC of 20. Like off the top of my head, I don't know how many that do that. I don't even know how many I know that go over 18, like off the top of my head, outside of like ancient dragons and stuff like that. What I mean? I think they have like 21. I think ancient dragons have 21, I want to say.
Do they?
I might be wrong on that though.
I just want to look at some of like the highest CR creatures that we have. A Leviathan only has a 17, and a Leviathan's a CR 20. We'll say, what is this? A Kraken's a CR 23, and it's only an 18 armor class.
Okay.
So yeah.
So 22 armor class, that's definitely, I mean, we're talking about late game. Like, you're definitely not touching this before level 18.
Tarask has a 25.
Okay, so
AC.
So this is supposed to be on par with a Tarask. That's basically
lightweight.
So
in Tiamat,
and consider, well, and that's not fair. I mean, but
Tiamat also has a 25.
Considering that the Tarask is literally one in all of existence, and it's literally like, the planet egg theory kind of concept. Like,
yeah.
Fair enough that, but that's saying that this is, if it's on par with that, if this is greater than your ancient dragon and this is on like the Tarask level, that's asking a lot. So how much hit points does a Tarask have? And can you also see what, like, if they have an ancient dragon on there?
Yeah, let me find one.
But I'm curious what the HP of a Tarask is, because if we're on that par, I kind of want to
Tarask,
because this one is 500.
HP of a Tarask is 676.
Okay, so this is a step down from a Tarask. It has less armor class and less hit points.
Correct.
But if that's 25 and how much? 16 or 600?
676, almost 700.
And this is 22 with 500. Yeah, that actually balances out. I think the ratio there isn't too bad.
I will say there is a challenge rating 28. I don't know what this creature is called, but they also have a 22 armor class and a 475
that's in the ballpark.
Hit points.
So that's totally in the ballpark. Speed of 5. I mean, I definitely get making large creatures slow, but even 5 seems a little bit too slow
for how big they are. Like, my thought process for 5 feet for a large creature like this is you can move, like, imagine a medium-sized creature can go from one square to the next, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking per size category, is like going from one square to the next. But because your square is, like Cosmic described, a 5x5, it would at least be able to be 5 of those feet, or like outside, like fully move from its former position instead of like overlapping, if that kind of makes sense. Which would be a
speed of 25 at lap.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying, is like a speed of 5 is very, because even like, again, like, what's the slowest, like, I don't know a creature that's under, like, that standard under, because even a zombies has 10, right?
Like, even like the zombies are low, but I don't think they're 5. Tarask is 40 feet. Let me look at zombie.
I mean, the Tarask has 40 feet and is fully, like. So yeah,
zombies have 20 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 10 feet even. I mean, but again, I kind of agree with you though. Like, if you consider the movement and you don't want it to be a lot, if you consider it takes up 5 squares, even giving it a movement of 25 only means that it can move one of its equivalent squares.
Yes.
That's a lot to us, but that's literally like saying you can move to the square next to you as someone who can only move 5 feet. When you ratio it, that actually is the creature's 5 foot, right? Like, because you would think a spider that big could probably do 150 feet. You know what I mean? Because it would have 30 versions of its own speed, which are 5x5s, right? So I could see knocking this down to a 25 because it represents the creature's like own square. Because to us, that might seem fast for a large creature, but to it, that's still lumbering, right? Because it has to move each one of its squares over one. And that's saying that this can only do that once. It can literally only move all of its body over one square one time each.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could get around that as a DM running something that slow.
Because then you like, if your players decide to run away or they decide to kite it or if they decide to do anything, it depending on what its range is and what its abilities are.
It's definitely something that it's kind of one of those boss fights. Kind of reminds me of like a Final Fantasy boss fight where the boss is just like stuck there and you're just kind of in the general vicinity wailing on it.
I did end up looking up an ancient green dragon. They got 21 AC, 385 hit points.
That actually seems
at
low.
A CR 22.
I'm surprised about the hit points. That actually seems low for a 21 AC, but still, again, with the 22 AC being just shy of this and the 23 being 600, like
we're still on the right.
We're way well within the ballpark. I'm totally fine with this.
I'm really curious if these guys are going to have any sort of like lair actions or anything like that.
So Cosmic says it's like mainly crawling, but it still has its dash action. And
which would only give it 10 feet.
Again, so that's what I'm saying is I think the 25 is the way to go.
Yeah.
You know, you're still making not as fast as everybody else, but in ratio, it's literally only letting it move its body distance once.
And I'll say this, even the 25-foot movement speed with dashing, most people that are going to be going up against something this crazy aren't going to be underneath like what, level 15, 16, something like that. They're going to be like a high level party coming up against this. And a lot of them are going to, at the very least, have the ability to move, you know, at higher speed. So like if they do need to get away, if they do need to run away, like you still want them to feel like they're in danger. But like if I'm being chased by a snail, I'm not scared no matter how scary that snail is. Like I'm gonna be able to escape it. You know what I mean? So like that's my only thought process on that front. But
yeah, so far I think that would be the only thing that I would definitely consider is that moving that slow mechanically doesn't sound like it gives the creature much of anything. Now granted, situationally it may not be designed for a encounter that you would intend it to move. Like the DM may not be encouraged to have it move. Again, might just be one of those it's right in the situation. But overall for a creature, I still feel like ratio its movement, right?
For sure. It's
ratio
exactly
its movement, because this means that it can at least move its distance, its width and body that distance. I think that's all it can do is move its body distance. And that's fairly slow for any creature. You know, because if you think of a giant walking, like a 30 feet for a giant is a very small step. But if that's his fastest speed because he just has to lumber, that maybe looks fast to us for such a giant creature, but that's literally the slowest pace you could ever walk in real life, right? So that's what I kind of like to look at in terms of how that speed gets. But I do agree that knocking down the speed to some extent for a large
makes a lot of sense,
good. But if you're going to do a 5x5, I think you had it right.
Okay.
So armor class isn't terrible. It's definitely scary, but not terrible. But the hit points match, so I'm fine with that. I'm curious if this 5 foot thick natural bone armor is lore, or if that's going to come into play
mechanically somewhere.
Because it's one of those things where I totally get why you want to explain why you have the 22, but I'm also really curious to see if this is going to come up.
I do know that a lot of them, I've never actually heard any natural armor described by their thickness. So the fact that it's specifically 5 foot thick, I know that there are certain spells that can't go through certain surfaces that are 5 feet thick.
So maybe that's just a way to go about like the shatter spell or bore or whatever like that.
Right. Or certain senses can't sense things through something that's 5, but it's usually like a wall. And if this is bones, then I'm assuming that there's going to be holes of sorts theoretically within that position. So who knows?
We got a posture check.
Posture check. Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you, Hecate.
That was Aki's.
Yes, there is a picture for this Hecate. It's closer to the bottom of the build. We'll get to it.
Yeah, because the picture specifically more from a game reference, but I don't know if I guess that's going to be what we're
actually. That'll be a good question. Like, is this build based off of the lore from the game or the lore from the creature itself?
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, that would be really interesting too. Because the picture, I think I caught a glimpse of it when we pulled it up, and the picture definitely seems bigger than a 5x5. So that gives me more of that, video game boss like full screen.
Right.
So we'll see if that's intended or not.
Loosely on the game, he says.
All right. So for stats, we have a strength of 18, a dex of 11, a constitution of 20, an intelligence of 3, a wisdom of 5, and a charisma of 5.
Very low mental stats, but massive physical stats, with the exception of dex.
I mean, dex I expect. I'm actually surprised dex isn't like a negative modifier. I'm kind of surprised that dex isn't like a 9. It could be an 8 or a 9. Not that it needs to be, but
right.
I can easily see that. I'm really, really curious about the intelligence. Just because if this is supposed to be like a boss-like monster, giving it such low intelligence makes it seem more of a mindless summon, which technically kind of goes along more with like the super traditional lore of what the Dokuro are. But I'm really curious what the intent of having a mindless creature is, because at 3 you can't really even speak.
Might be able to
understand. I think you can understand like orders, but that's it.
I'm actually curious if the core houses the mental stats.
Oh, so this is supposed to be like an exterior.
I'm thinking like in some way, shape, or form, especially because these were brought in together. Like it feels like a lot of what this is like, yeah, this is like a unit, but hey, it almost feels like, how you have combats where the goal isn't like you have to have a creative way to like finish it. Like, hey, you need to you do this certain mechanic in order to beat the boss. Like you got to hit the crystal 5 times, get it cracked, and then cast, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Yeah. But I think that a lot of what this creature might be able to do is going to be connected with the core.
Okay.
At least in some way. It is supposed to be pretty dumb. Okay. According to the lore.
So it is basically, Cosmic says it is kind of loosely based off the game. But more so proper lore and mythos. And Lucifer is saying that, so with the base stat abilities, it would auto-fail a save for control undead. Interesting.
So somebody could easily just cast control undead on it.
Right.
And it would auto-fail a save because... now the question is, would that auto-fail... could it be overcome by legendary resistances? Because legendary resistances, you can succeed any save that you would have normally.
I think that's what Lucifer was trying to get to, is that if you make it immune to something like Control Undead, it becomes a lot more tough.
Gotcha.
And of course, Marty comes in with the legendary action as well.
Sure.
Jeez, everybody's talking all of a sudden. What is up, everybody? Suddenly, everybody
out here getting it.
This creature is permafrosted. It has legendary actions immune to control undead already. It's a cult summon, so it's technically already under the effect of control undead. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting. Okay, so we have saving throws are a strength plus 10 and dexterity plus 6. We have skills in intimidation and perception. It's vulnerable to radiant damage. It's resistant to acid, bludgeoning, fire, piercing, and slashing. Damage immunities. It's immune to force, necrotic, poison, bludgeoning. Weird, we have bludgeoning under resistance and immunity. And piercing and slashing. From non-magical attacks. Gotcha.
Yes.
I didn't see that part. So damage resistance to... So does that mean it has damage resistance to magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, it's resistant to magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, but it is immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing that isn't magical.
Gotcha. I would probably end up just putting magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, like just add that like magical to that part, because then you have the non-magical. It just, because again, to me it's weird that you see it's resistant to these and immune to
I was trying to figure out how to put that in there so it actually, when you read it, you're like, oh, that's what's happening here. But
okay, I get that.
I feel that.
Condition immunities: exhaustion, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, stunned, and unconscious. Surprised that prone is a condition immunity. You'd think that if you could knock it over, you think that would actually like slow it down even more.
Unless it's just because it doesn't have legs, that it's already lightweight crawling.
I guess that's fair. Like technically, it's as good as you can get.
Right.
Okay, and then senses, it has 150 or 180 feet of dark vision and a passive perception of 13, and it understands all languages, but it cannot speak. So that's kind of part of the whole. It can just take commands and everything. All right, so abilities. Spell resistance. The body has advantage on saving throws against spells. So
okay.
Makes sense. Negative healing. The body is immune to necrotic damage. Additionally, it regains hit points equal to the amount of necrotic damage it would have taken.
So that means if you do necrotic damage to it, you're healing it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Slow immunity. The body is immune to the effects of the slow spell. Turn immunity. The body is immune to the effects of turn undead. And then legendary resistances. It has 3 per day. And it can use these. If it fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead at the cost of 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if it takes radiant damage, it can choose to use its bones to shield it from the light. While in this state, it gains immunity to radiant damage for 1 minute, but the body loses all of its other damage immunities. The damage immunities lost by this legendary action are treated as neutral damage. The 1 minute duration cannot be shortened, negated, or dispelled. So I see where that's going. The unfortunate thing I see here is you can only bait it to do that once. So basically you have to cast radiant damage on it as enough times for it to do this, and then you have 1 minute to wail on it to kill it. Because once that goes away, you're back to the 22 AC. Like you were talking about, like the boss concept of the mechanic. This is that mechanic. Is if it takes radiant damage, it can choose. It won't require. So that means you have to hit it with enough radiant damage for it to decide to do this, and then once you
back
do,
in the
you can completely wail.
In the damages, is it vulnerable to radiant damage?
It is vulnerable to radiant damage. So again, it's more of one of those, you have to goad it into doing this, but you have to time it well, right? Like this is one of those things that if you don't know this going into the battle, and this is one of those hard things about when you make lore specific stuff, because it's like when you make something, right? If as a DM, you have to make a decision on what lore is going to be available about something like this. Because if this is not knowable, because this isn't going to be looked at in a book, right? So there's going to be no meta knowledge for the players to have, like assuming that you're a DM running this.
Right.
Your players aren't going to know it because there's going to be no
They're not going to be able to like go check it out.
And then you have to make a decision in game, can they learn about it? Because if you don't, they could spend more than half the fight, basically spinning their wheels. And then by the time they do the radiant damage to trigger this, they may not have enough in them to finish the job. But if they do know about this, the downside is because this thing can only do it once, you basically have to, if you know that going in, the best route, the best way to beat this is to start off with as much radiant damage as possible until it triggers. And then you have to hope you can take it down in a minute, which, I mean, let's face it.
Most battles don't last longer than a minute. But again, this is a super boss, so there could be 500 hit points. But I will say, like, I do like the idea that, because again, this is a super boss. This is hopefully going to be in later gameplay, and you're going to expect like the players here to be seeking out this information. I 100% feel like it is very important for the DM to make this information available.
Exactly.
But if their
agree.
players aren't invested in seeking out that information, they could miss it, and that could make their fight way more challenging than it needs to be, right? So, or potentially give them a way to find it out mid combat or something to that effect. So I can totally get behind that. At least as a foundation.
I think where I'm having the issue is it's kind of one of those weird states where it's going to last long enough if you can get it to trigger, but you have to know to trigger it. And that's kind of like the whole point, is to trigger it. Is once you trigger it, you take away all of its immunities, right? So you basically, all of its damage immunities. So you can turn everything that you have on it, right? Everybody that can attack it now will do good damage. It'll do at least, normal
standard damage, yeah.
Instead of half damage. I just feel like if you're gonna, again, because it lasts for a minute, it's like once it's triggered, you're kind of golden as long as you prepped. So a lot of it to me feels really weighted on the DM to ensure that they have this info, because if you don't, you are kind of shot in the foot. So it's either going to have to come through a plot pointed dialogue, like, they're going to be given it, or they have to be well known to go after it, right? So I'm a little bit concerned about that. That's like my only concern is, could this have been done in a way that maybe it can trigger more often, but for less time? Like anytime it takes radiant damage for the next 2 turns, it loses its vulnerabilities or resistances.
I honestly like that as a mechanic.
Because then if you have paladins, if you have magical weapons that are immune to do radiant damage, you would be more useful. But this is really,
I do feel like it'd make for a way more dynamic fight for sure. Like you're out here like, all right, I need you to hit it with radiant damage. I got this big spell that I'm brewing up or whatever.
Play on each other. I think that would be something a little bit more reactive. Plus, do we have any other? Yeah. So, and this was the only legendary resistances it has, right? So I like the failed saving throw as a cost 1.
That's the very standard. Most anything that has legendary resistances has that one.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that, but like, the idea of the legendary resistance like triggering the immunity is, I think, where I'm having a hard time, because again, it's like if you know it, that's what you're going to go for, and if you don't know it, you're kind of screwed. So I would feel like it would be nicer if it could trigger slightly easier but for less time. So the window is smaller, and even if it was, anytime it takes radiant damage, it no longer has its immunities or resistances until the start of its next turn.
I would even say radiant damage over a certain amount, like over 50 points of radiant damage, just because like...
Yeah, just something that the players could control more. And then what you can do is maybe at the cost of 1, it can negate radiant damage 1 time. So if you can trigger it all the time, it has 2 costs up to 3 costs to negate it throughout the whole fight. Or it's going to do the fail saving throw. So that also gives the DM failed saving throw or radiant damage. I can only do one of these 3 times, up to 3 times, or any combination thereof. So that gives the DM a little bit more play in, oh, that's going to be a good one. Now I'm taking the radiant damage off of that one.
Yeah.
Right? But maybe you just take it. You're like, nah, it's too early in the fight. I'm going to let you do your radiant damage. Oh, you guys can really pile it on. Like, I feel like that might be more of a given play. Is make it, if it fails saving throw, you cost 1 to succeed, and then another cost 1 to negate radiant damage, because whenever radiant damage is taken over a certain point, he loses it.
I do like that. I really do like
more
that.
Like a dynamic battle too, because it's going to go on and off a little bit. So you're going to have those moments where if you don't prep things in time, you lose the moment, then you got to trigger it again. And like you were saying, if they learn that throughout the gameplay and throughout their story, they would be able to better plan for it, and everybody, I think, would have an opportunity, right? But what's downside of this is how many different types of in the standard party, how many people can on average do radiant damage?
I mean, depending on what subclass you are, anybody that's connected with a god,
so like maybe 1 or 2 people, because you might have a paladin and a cleric. You might have, so I'm just trying to think of worst case scenario.
I'm sure a wizard would find some radiant damage somewhere in their spell list.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, imagine you have that paladin and he goes down early for whatever reason. Now you can't radiant damage, right? I'm kind of thinking, like, if it were something that wasn't so much of a one hit wonder, I kind of feel like it would be really nice to be able to trigger it more.
Yeah.
So that would be my potential, alteration. Is I do like the radiant damage. I do like the legendary resistance to block it. I just feel like as is, it's a little bit, in one respect, too easy to access if you know about it. Like, it's too easy to access and take away his big immunity. Because it feels like at this point, if you knew about this, if the players know about this and have planned for it, it feels like this is more about the lore than it is about the mechanic, because it's going to be so easily overcome. But if it's not known about,
I feel that. I do feel that.
Big barrier to win the battle if you don't know about it, right? So I don't know if I feel like, I'm not against having to like be a DM that's required to give this information out. You know what I mean? Like, if it's part of the campaign, you kind of have to make sure they get it. But I am of the way that I DM, I would much prefer it to be an optional.
Gotcha.
And so you could either learn that it's resistant to radiant damage, or it's just because it's so easy that when you do radiant damage, you catch on real quick. That's the way I would like to approach it, is if you either learned about it, or if you're dumb enough, hopefully one of you will do something radiant damage, or I can throw it in that it gets hit with radiant damage, by an NPC or something, and then you catch on. That's how we have to do it, right? Because again, like that whole, I like the mechanic, but I feel like this is way too much too easy to pass, or it's too big of a bar. If you either know it or you don't,
right?
It's too black and white,
and it's, I would say it shifts the scales fairly significantly, one way or the other. When you don't know it, it's shitty, and when you do know it, it's not cake, but like it significantly makes things very different. So,
but I really like the ability. Like, I love the concept of the radiant damage being able to somehow inflict those,
especially because we don't see stuff like that. We don't see basically, this almost makes me feel like this creature has like different stages, like, right, like there's like you've done all this damage to it, and now you've hit it with radiant damage, and it needs to block it because it's hurt enough that it could do crazy damage to it, and now you got all this other opportunity to lay into it. So I'm definitely here for that. It's the concept.
Like the same concept of why I was always a fan of being able to get like advantage if you and an ally were flanking an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it totally makes sense because the enemy can't pay attention to two people on either side of him.
Yes.
So one of you has to take his attention, and then there was also an added ability that you could do where you could use like a bonus action to basically take their attention after your turn. So eventually you would attack them, and then there was like a feat you could take to where as a bonus action you could essentially like it was basically like a sparring action to where you were kind of like, juking them. You weren't really attacking, but you were just keeping them on their guard.
Yeah.
So what you would
keeping them focused on you.
Yeah. So what it would basically do is the feat itself was more geared so they can't attack any of your allies. Like, they were basically required to attack kind of thing. But it added to the benefit of the whole, then if you're taking his attention, then I can flank him, and then I get advantage because he's absolutely tied in with you, right? So that's what this kind of gives me that feeling, right? Is like that option of that back and forth where there's going to be an opportunity for you to open up that window. But I just think that that window should be I think it should be presented throughout the combat instead of a one-time.
Got you. Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, cool effect. Oh, I see how it is, guys. I see how it is. All right, which one did you choose? You did the switch, not the change. Switch spots is for 10 minutes. Gotcha. All right.
Is it my turn?
Hecate decided that we switch spots.
All right. I'm coming. Let's see what happens.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, I actually updated this one because after we did because we needed to test it out the first time to figure out like what it was going to be. I do like the 10 minutes, but I also added another one.
Oh, okay.
10 minutes and then there's a 30
There's switch spots and then there's
change places. Which is like a 30-minute timer.
Got you. And I'm hoping that one's a lot more expensive.
Yeah, way more expensive. Okay. There's just hit the 10-minute timer. Weird.
All right.
So weird.
So strange.
All right.
Whatever, it's fine. All right, 10-minute timer.
Go.
Begin.
All right.
Alrighty.
Control, man. So we just did the legendary action.
Yeah. Done with legendary actions. Let's take a gander at the actions that we have. So this creature has multi-attack. The body makes 2 attacks. First is arm swipe, a melee weapon attack with a +10 to hit, a reach of 30 feet, 1 target. It hits a average of 22, but a 48 +4 bludgeoning damage. Whenever this attack misses, when targeting a tiny and small creature, it can be flavored as them moving or jumping between the spaces of the bones. Interesting.
Okay, wait, which one? Okay, so hold on. I gotta keep up with that. So we're still with arm swipe. So I dig the 30. Well, so if this thing is,
its reach is massive according to this.
So I don't know, how can you have something that takes up 5x5 but then reaches more than their body distance in one side?
So have you ever seen those people who just have like a freaking massive wingspan that they're like, what do you call it? Their arms reach down past like their knees and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I can think of, because again, we're looking
even
at
it's proportional. So I'm just trying to think of like proportion wise, that means that if their body is 25 feet wide, but their arm is 30 feet long, that's just a very unique proportion. But okay, so wait, hold on. If the body So it's detached from its legs, I'm assuming, right? Because it's not a full body.
It seems that way, right?
So if it's detached from its legs, if the body itself is 25 feet wide, so it's like shoulder to shoulder, right? Like my rib cage, 25 feet. And then I have a 30-foot arm here and a 30-foot arm here. That would mean that my original size, because if you take human proportions, your size is from fingertip to fingertip, like your height. So if you take 30 feet plus 30 feet plus 25 feet, that's 85 feet tall, which is roughly about where we said was kind of the max.
Lightweight?
Maybe a little bit taller. So maybe 20 foot to 25 foot reach would be more accurate. And I still think it's very weird that the reach is bigger than the creature itself, like that much bigger than the creature itself.
I will say this one is kind of articulating it like an arm swipe. Like the next one's called Shattering Slam, and it's got a smaller reach, but the reach on this makes it feel like your arm is just fully extended and you're just swinging it across the battlefield. So, and maybe there's like a little bit of leaning in there, so to speak. You like put one arm down to plant and then the other arm just sweeps all the way across.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know if I would go that far with the swipe, but I don't mind the attack in general. Also, personally though, I mean, I'm not a big fan of like where it says like it can be flavored as they jump between the spaces of the bones. I'm just not a huge fan of that type of like verbiage and rules. It's a little like rules are meant for the mechanics, like what they do. But it does give me an idea. However, I wouldn't mind this, even if we keep the 30 foot. I wouldn't mind this as maybe tiny and like it has disadvantage against tiny and small creatures because they can fit through the spaces.
So I'm actually curious because the way, even though I just talked about it as like an arm swiping across something, it is a melee weapon attack and it does say one target.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's weird. This almost feels like you would either be like
it's almost like just an extended punch. Like, they just reach out and punch you, because you would think a swipe would be like a section of the battlefield.
That is my mindset.
Or it would be like a punch, so anyone in that line. But no, this is really more. Actually, this is what it's more of. Is the swipe is more coming down on you. It's more of the I'm gonna swipe at like a bug. You're gonna swipe at that one spot.
Interesting.
So that's what it's more of. It's not so much a across the. What?
You guys on YouTube, if you haven't noticed?
What's up on YouTube?
I'm not sure. Is it us on YouTube? We're still streaming on YouTube, right?
On YouTube.
It's intended for one target, but if others are in the way, it can be collateral damage. Okay, so imagine if like there's. So then what would be the area of the attack, and what would be considered them being in the way? Is it just anyone in between you and the target? Or is it more of anyone who's around the area? Like if my hand's coming down.
See, it's almost like what it should be is that it should be part of multi-attack, in my opinion. It should be that the body makes 2 attacks. They act as melee weapon attacks that have a reach of 25 to 30. Attacking one target. That's what arm swipe should be. Is arm swipe is essentially what you can do twice. Is how I think it should read.
Interesting.
Multi-attack, arm swipe is the multi-attack.
So you can arm swipe 2 times. You can make 2 arm swipes.
I think that makes it better, because then Shattering Slam is interesting that Shattering Slam is only 10 feet, which I'm not really understanding how that works, but I guess slamming yourself down, slamming a hand down is only so far away from you.
Maybe it's in order to get the power for the Shattering Slam, it needs to be
you get like a 10-foot area of
you coming down on
terrain.
top of it.
So I do like that. So yeah, I'm wondering if, because I don't think multi-attack should be, you can't do, I don't know if you would be able to do Shattering Slam twice, right?
So the way that this multi-attack is described is you can mix and match this however you like. Any 2 of these options, arm swipe, Shattering Slam, or headbutt, you can do any 2 of those per turn. That's the way this is articulated. There's some other ones that are saying like you have to do one of these and one of these for your multi-attack. Like there's creatures that say that there'll be some multi-attacks that say you can choose. You can do this 3 times, you can do that 2 times, and this 1 time. So,
but this is it. Yeah, this is indicating it can do all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm wondering if that should also be, because again, some of these attacks, if you kind of like read them, I don't know if you would be able to justify them happening back to back, right? Like shattering slam and then arm swipe. I'm not sure I could visualize that happening quickly with a character, especially with a monster that can only move 5 feet. Like it just doesn't seem like these things are cohesive with it. So multi-attack, the body can make 2 arm swipes attacks. I think that's what it should read.
Okay.
Because then arm swipes are just against 2 different targets, right? You have 2 arms and you're basically, individually swiping at those individuals, right? I would be okay with 1 arm swipe per hand. Then
right.
Shattering slam, I imagine it being both hands together,
like a 2-fisted slam. Yes.
1 attack. And now headbutt's interesting too, because all I saw was ranged, and I didn't really read to the rest of it. But that's all about.
That is strange. So let me read Shattering Slam real quick, just so we can get all the details for it. It says, it's a melee weapon attack, another +10 to hit, 10-foot reach, 1 target again. It does an average of 31 damage with 5d10 plus 4 bludgeoning. The body claps its 2 hands together to form a large fist and slams it down on the ground or at a target it can see within range. Additionally, it creates 10-foot area cube of difficult terrain at the point of impact. Any creature hit by the attack is knocked prone. I'm curious about the cube aspect of it, because if there's a 10-foot cube, that makes me feel like there's height to it. And I'm curious how
I think it just meant just a 10-foot area. So
square.
A 10 by 10. So wherever his hands come down, that 10 by 10 is now difficult terrain.
Interesting. Okay. And then the headbutt is a ranged weapon attack, a range of 45 to 60 feet. Target each creature in a 10-foot area. See, I feel like that verbiage should have been on Shattering Slam. Each creature in a 10-foot area instead of just the 1 target.
Right, exactly. And then what I don't understand is he says headbutt, but are we throwing our head?
I mean, it kind of what it feels like. Your head kind of gets detached, especially if it's going 60 feet. Your average damage is going to be 48 with 8d10 plus 4. And then if this attack misses, it creates a 10-foot area of difficult terrain at the point of impact, kind of similar to the Shattering Slam.
And so it's a ranged attack, which also means that if it were I could understand if it takes its head off and slams it on the ground to make a bigger area than its fist. If those two, Shattering Slam and headbutt, were a bit the same but different areas. But if it's throwing its head, that's only a 1-time thing, because then it would have to go retrieve it, and it's so slow. So
unless its head's somehow spectrally attached to its body and it'll just return back to you like a returning weapon or something like that.
I would definitely like to see verbiage on that for the DM's case, because I'm also wondering so let's say it throws its head and its head is now away from its body. Is its head available to be attacked? Does its head take damage, or only does the so it's an interesting concept. I don't mind it. I just would have I would have liked to know a little bit more about what the intent was, because it's hard to understand. So it would take its head off, throw it again. Is it supposed to come back? Is it a 1-time deal? And the Shattering Slam, I see people in chat kind of talking about it a little bit. I like Shattering Slam. It is a little bit weird that it's it can target the ground if it's I feel like it really doesn't have to do anything with the target. I think it's just it should just be able to.
That verbiage for headbutt is perfect for Shattering Slam.
I think so too. I think the idea behind it is that Shattering Slam should just target an area, and then anything within that area.
And I would also agree with Pokeniner. This is very much saving throw verbiage, because a lot of the stuff that's happening, especially in area of effects, it's saying something to the effect of, hey, you guys got to do something or you'll get hit.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I really, and I like that. That's why, I really
Timer's up, by the way.
Oh, okay. So I really think that, depending upon what we're talking about, it can be fast. So I'm thinking about it, and it's I agree with you. Headbutt description on Shatter Slam, I think is the way to go. I'd like to see multi-attack limited to arm swipe.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shattering Slam just targets the ground with the headbutt description. And then with headbutt, if we want a ranged attack,
I don't believe there's a CR associated with this Pokeniner.
I'm really curious because it's a normal headbutt, but the skull is elevated, so it's part of the range from the difference between the elevated position and the ground. So it's like leaning over, but it doesn't have like a lower body. So,
but it's if we're talking about range,
and your range doesn't,
like, that's range from your body. So if it's still attached to your body, and you're saying the 60 feet is, then that's not range from the source.
So that would still be a melee attack, just with reach. That's basically just a melee attack with reach.
Lightweight, yeah.
So I would say that if we wanted to do a ranged attack, it would be more like, I mean, you could even just say that it has like a boomerang rib. It can rip out one of his ribs and it acts as a boomerang. So it can throw a ranged target, and then it just literally has the boomerang.
Sure.
Comes back. Like we could easily do that. It's like the headbutt doesn't sound bad, but unfortunately, the headbutt and shatter and slam are the same thing, just at different distances. And I feel like not only is that a waste of ability for a DM, right? You're basically just saying that you can do the same thing, but at two differences. It's like, so then why give me two different abilities? Why not just give me one ability that has two ranges? You know what I mean? It feels like we're not getting as much out of this as we could for a boss battle if two of the attacks do the exact same thing. A shatter and slam hits a 10 square area, headbutt hits a 10 square area, and the only difference is an average of 17 hit points. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't feel like there's enough variety there to justify it. I feel like if it were going to be a range attack, let it take off its head.
Yeah.
Let that do stupid amounts of damage. Like again, if it's a one-time deal, let it take off its head as a legendary action.
Yeah.
Toss it to a location it can see within range. Anyone within that 10-foot area, even make it 20 feet, make its head huge. Even make it a 3x3. Anybody within that 3x3,
especially something this big,
takes like 100 points of damage, or takes a certain amount of dice damage, unless they're under 100 points of damage. And if they're under 100 points, they automatically go into saving throws. Like, make this attack
interesting,
because it's a fucking skull landing on you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, yes, make it a ranged attack, but make this thing, because again, you summon this thing, it's not alive, it doesn't need a brain, so its head is just another bone. So imagine just at some point it can take off its head and target a group. Like, again, someone goes down and there's a guy going to heal them. I get 2 for 1.
Wild.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Yep.
But I like that more. Like, make it massive amounts of damage if you're caught in it, and even make it like, if you have, I don't know how to make it like any better to get out of the way. Like after it throws it, if you have an extra opportunity, like again, saving throw. But the idea just being that if you can't get out of the way, it's supposed to be like it's literally a 20-ton skull. Landing on your spot. I wouldn't mind that as it's kind of not capstone, but as a kind of a one-time legendary action. And then because we even increased its speed, if you take our speed, it can crawl its way over to its head.
Yeah.
And as long as it reattaches its head, it can do it again.
Yeah.
Like you can
so that'll be the restriction for how often it can do it. It's got to go retrieve it and stuff like that. But everything else still.
Limit it to the 25 feet. If you give it, a range, even if you give that a range of 120 feet that it can throw, it just has to take that much time to go get its head. So no matter where it throws it.
I'm not gonna lie though, I'm as a player, one of my first questions is, after you throw that head, can I cast polymorph on that head?
I mean,
can I banish just the head?
I mean, the body has advantages on saving throws against spells, so it's technically part of the body.
Sure.
So it would have advantage, but it's technically like.
But it theoretically might be possible.
Theoretically, yeah. So that's what I'm kind of thinking, right? Is like I like these attempts at the attacks. I do like arm swipe. I like shatter and slam, but the headbutt is just like I just feel like it's shatter and slam, but with more distance. Yeah. And at that case, I'd much rather have like.
I feel like these attacks could be worded a little bit differently. I especially because I've heard you in the past, like when you hear like the name of something, it gives you an idea of what's happening. Specifically for me, arm swipe makes me feel like you're swiping a whole bunch of stuff.
I was kind of thinking it was a like an area of effect, like multiple people. The fact that it was one target, a little bit weird for the specific name, but that's names are whatever, right? Like names don't necessarily need to be in.
Right.
But yeah, I would like a different ranged attack. I just think that we could definitely improve the range attack. Shatter and Slam, I think you're right. I think it really just needs headbutts, like headbutts case, with the same range. And then yeah, multi attack with arm swipe I think is fine. Like it's a boss. Like let it have that, right? I mean, hell, you can even add in. I wouldn't even mind adding in to have like a third attack. Is that let it have something like trample, where when it moves, any creature in its path that's above a size small has to make a saving throw or be trampled. Knocked prone, take damage, and then it's like then it could be like difficult terrain.
I do like that.
You know, spiked growth. Yeah. Let's say he got 15 feet before you got trampled, but then there's still 15 more feet he has to go.
Right.
So then you have to keep making, like, I could imagine that where it's like, because again, I like the idea of a smaller, tiny creature not being affected because they can, because tiny can always occupy. I think with this thing, a small should be able to, but I like the idea of a medium creature has to like take a save, and then anything larger than a medium creature has disadvantage on a save versus trample.
Yeah,
because
your
then
Centaur out here,
it could swipe, and then move, and then as it drags its body across, it's basically trampling. You know, you mean it's like basically pushing you out of the way.
Right.
So I could see, like, if you wanted to add more attacks to it, I could see the movement itself being an attack, but you would definitely need what we said is the 25 feet of movement instead of the 5.
I kind of like Lucifer's idea about an advertised / broadcasted attack. Like in a lot of games and stuff, you'll see tells for a creature about like what they're about to do.
That's what I was kind of getting at, is if you throw the skull, like having like a save throw is you need that extra bit to have time to get out of the way. And yeah, something like that where it's like you throw it up and then like a shadow like appears on the ground or something, right? Like he just literally tosses it up and then a shadow appears where it's going to land, and then you give them like 1 round to move if they can. Yeah. That would be kind of cool. So yeah, arm swipe is good with multi-attack. Shatter Slam is fine. I just think we need a better ranged weapon mainly. Bonus actions. The Dokuro Gaze. The body can gaze into the eyes of a single creature it can see. If that creature has temporary hit points, interesting, they make a DC 11 Charisma or Intimidation saving throw with disadvantage. On a fail, the creature's max HP is reduced by the amount of temporary hit points they have. On a success, the creature's temporary hit points are set to 0. If the creature targeted does not have any hit points, the bonus action is wasted.
Interesting.
So if you have, basically this is, if you have temp HP, you're either going to lose your temp HP or you're going to reduce it from your max.
So the best you can hope for is losing your temp HP. The worst is your hit point maximum getting reduced.
Right.
So
isn't there a cap? Does 5th edition have a cap on how much temp HP you can have?
I will say, just in general, this creature having an 11 saving throw for anything feels crazy low. I understand.
It's a disadvantage.
What's that?
It is a disadvantage, and it is pretty harsh to knock down someone's permanent HP, especially late in the game. Well, I mean, again, but it's late in the game. If this is your last boss, if you win, you win.
If it's just your max HP, like, you're technically not getting hurt. Unless you, because like if you're not taking active damage, you're just losing potential damage. So, you know,
that is true.
And the question is, if I fail, do I also lose my temp HP and reduce my hit point maximum, or is it just reducing my hit point maximum and I keep the temp HP?
I read that as you keep the temp HP.
Okay.
What's going on in chat?
Interesting.
Maybe some minion undead holding people in place.
That could be a thing.
There's so much going on in chat. Oh, they were asking about the CR. Gotcha.
Yeah, Poking Iron around and we're talking about CR for a little bit. But
and so Marty mentions like that's kind of a lose-lose, which I don't mind for a big boss battle. I don't mind, you know, like again, it's kind of like save for half damage. Right? Sure. It means it's gonna happen. He got you. It is kind of weird for a gaze attack to just be guaranteed. Like he sees you. And the thing is, though, that's a bonus action, which means every round, why wouldn't the DM like again, if the DM is playing to win, why wouldn't the DM do that every round?
Unless I mean, granted, it's his only bonus action, so wasting a bonus action doesn't really mean anything for this creature.
Yet we haven't seen any other bonus actions, so it literally could be a spammed every round. He's just gonna try to do this. But the thing is it only works on people with temp HP. So also at the same time, again, how often and how many ways can you gain temp HP, and how often do you do that mid battle?
Honestly, there's a lot of ways to get temp HP. There's a lot of ways to do it like consistently throughout battle. But how often does it really come up? Like,
and how much do you usually rack up? Because I don't think I've ever been myself, maybe 10. I usually don't get more than 10 HP, 10 temp HP.
I've been seeing, especially a lot lately, there are a lot of cool, later game spells, later game abilities that will give you and even potentially recycle temp HP consistently. Like there's this one spell that I really like. What is it called? Armor of Agathis, that gives you temp HP, and then it'll react against the people that are doing melee damage against you. But
see, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking gaze attack, right? What I'm almost thinking is, what I would like to do is make this gaze attack something along the lines of either a legendary action, I don't know about a bonus action, but even a bonus action, because it would have a better save, but have it more like a gaze spell where it's either like fear, frightened, stunned, paralyzed, right? And so you save against the spell and nothing happens, but if you get caught in the spell, you have to save out, right? Maybe save ends, maybe it goes for a couple rounds, but for every round you don't save out, you begin to lose a permanent HP.
Interesting.
So it's a gaze attack. If you save, no big deal, but if you fail, you're paralyzed until the next turn. Then your next turn, you can try to save out. And if you fail that save, you lose some amount of permanent
HP. Yeah. You get a reduction or something.
Next round, you have to do it again. And maybe it's a 5-round thing or a 1d6. So a gaze attack for 1d6 rounds, you're paralyzed. And every round you save out, and for every round you don't save, you will lose 10 HP, permanent HP. So that's up to 50 permanent HP you could lose if you keep failing your rolls.
And again, there's no limit to how many times you can do this.
I would be, because again, if it's always going to be on saves, I mean, it's still a lot, but this is the big bad. This is the final, one of the final bosses. I'm okay with having that kind of a save action as bonus, right?
Maybe
he can only have one person or two people at a time. Maybe he can only paralyze so many people at a time.
Yeah.
So he can do it every round, but once he has two people paralyzed, he can't do it again until they save out.
I might do something to the effect of, because I've seen him do it before, where they're like, hey, this doesn't come back except for on like a roll of a 5 or a 6 of a d6.
Oh, if you save out of it, you can't be targeted.
Well, just the creature can't use that ability again until they roll a 6 on a d6.
Yeah, and that's fine too.
And then
like a recharge.
Yeah.
But see, that would be so fine. Like once, because again, I like the idea of a gaze attack. I like the idea of reducing the max HP. That's not something we see a lot.
Yeah.
But
agreed.
Making it like the bonus action is fine, but making it set to the temp HP, I feel like again, it's a waste. It's kind of like making the headbutt the same attack as the shatter. It's just not quite enough almost. You know what I mean? It's like from a DM perspective, I don't feel like this is really enticing, in terms of outside the lore, right? Outside of like this being part of the plot. I'd want something that's a little bit more versatile that I could throw in different situations. I feel like this is going to be kind of not shoehorned in, but it feels like it's going to be very campaign specific. Like it would be best if you made this like the thing that everyone knows you're going to go after.
Interesting.
Like, the cult of the Dokuro or something.
Right.
Like you kind of have an idea that this is the ultimate boss that protects them. So I feel like if you wanted to take this as a potential creature that just exists in your world, I would like to see like this gaze attack be a little bit more versatile.
I feel that.
Because I feel 100%. Like it is. I like it. I just feel like it's a little weak. Like it just doesn't, it's so specific to waiting for that temp HP. And it's like, if you don't have it, it's just
and
kind
with
of
this
like,
creature's intelligence, like it, again, if there's no other way that it knows how to use its abilities, it's not going to be like picking and choosing.
Just spam it every round.
Yeah, it's just going to be like you.
Yeah, and then so in that case, it's kind of just at that case, if you're trying to do it like that way, you might as well just make it an aura. just an aura of like an area effect. If you were too close, you start lose. Like again, what if you are within 10 feet of it, you have to make a save or you lose 10 because it just has an aura of necrotic energy. That just like, you know what I mean? Like I think there would be a better way to explain this out. If you're not going to do the gaze attack, even an aura area of effect would even be better, because it sounds like, again, like you said, with the intelligence and this being a bonus action, it's almost intended. It sounds like it's intended to just be spammed every round. Like it's the first thing it's going to do is just pick a creature and gaze you. But if that's the case, as a DM, let me just state at the beginning of battle, if you come within this state, or the moment someone does, I can just state, here's an area of effect that's happening.
Right.
Instead of every round having to be like, do you have anything? No, okay, no, temp HP. Do you have any temp HP? Because you know what I mean? Like, if I know meta-wise as a DM, none of you have temp HP, I'm not even going to bother thinking about that ability. But that's not how the game should be played.
Very
if
much
the creature's going to use the ability, it needs to be part of it, right? And if you're just going to meta-game it out, if no one has temp HP, then it should just be an AoE. It should just be an always-on effect. Because that's kind of how it feels like it's being used. If it had more intelligence, then you were right. It'd be much more picky and choosy, and that would be a little bit more dynamic. But this is very much a always-on feel. But I do like the idea of a gaze, being able to shut someone down and zap or permanent HP. That's just something I don't ever see, and I kind of like that direction there.
For sure.
Because again, you think about this like massive like skeleton that you're facing, and it's supposed to be an intimidation check, right? So just that idea that you just get locked up and just paralyzed with fear, and then it's like the longer you stare at it, the more it's like zapping your will to live. That's what I want to imagine this, right? Like the longer you look at it just lumbering over you, the more you let the fear take over. It's literally just, because again, we've talked about HP is more than just physical damage.
Very much so.
So imagine the idea that it's not hurting you, but it's removing your will to live, your will to fight, your will to just not give up and be like, life is, you know what I mean? Like kind of like the movie, not Quiet Place, Bird Box, right? Where it was like,
I haven't seen that one.
Or the idea of like these creatures that come here, then people just succumb to it. And then others have to fight against it, right? I kind of like that idea of you just, it's inflicting you so much that you're just like, there's no winning. Just give in, just die. Like that's almost what I want that gaze to be, is you're just stuck losing your will to live until you get that courage to go, no, I can't.
No, I got this. Like, let's go.
But the longer you stay there, you don't come back out of that with that will to live. You lost it. That's where the permanent HP comes in. So yeah, that would be another option. Cosmic did confirm too in chat, when you lose the max HP, you still keep your 10 HP.
Okay.
So you would kind of keep you just lose that set amount.
Got you.
So if you're playing as a fiend wardlock, you could just absolutely get hurt. Wait, so I don't know if I understand what Marty said. So basically, if you're playing a fiend wardlock, you could absolutely get hurt all the time.
So I'm assuming fiend warlocks have, I can check real quick, but they have a lot of, it's kind of like what I was talking about, like recycling temporary hit points. So like that's a lot, that's a part of their build.
So it would almost be like the counter to that build.
Right.
Because it would just constantly, okay, gotcha. Now I understand, Marty.
What is fiend?
But Cosmic also, again, Cosmic confirmed what you said too. It's too dumb to really know the benefits of its abilities. So it wouldn't know to target the fiend. It would be random if it target the fiend. So it's one of those, yes, it could be used against a fiend character, but it wouldn't be directly used against.
That's it. Dark One's Blessing, starting at first level, when you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier plus your warlock level. So every time you kill something, you get 10 hit points. And so those would be like constantly recycling.
So Pokémon's talking about, let's see. So yeah, cohesion's just a little bit outside. I think we're on the same page. It's like, it's definitely more of a feeling like the plot would be gearing you towards this. Like definitely like I feel like as written right now, it feels like the campaign should definitely be gearing you towards this, and not you stumble across it or it's up to you to learn about it. I feel like the game should have been prepping you for this.
This is what we're doing.
And then Pokemon also gave us the max temp HP, or one of the biggest temp HPs you can get is 45 with the level 9 armor of Agathis.
That I would say standard is, again, yes, that's about as big of temporary hit points as you could get initially. I feel like there's other ways, like, because I know aid gives, oh no, aid's actual hit points. What's that feat that gives you temp hit points? Is it the feast one, or is it inspiring leader? There's a couple of feats where you can like spend some time and give your entire party a bunch of temporary hit points or something like that. But
I guess I had an interesting idea too when we were talking about the potentially being paralyzed with fear and losing the points. If you fail like 5 times or that 6th time, you become petrified.
Oh,
like just straight up like
straight up
petrified stone.
Wild.
That would be interesting. And yeah, Pokemon, yeah, there's no temp HP. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Man, there's so much chat. I don't know. My chat wasn't updating, so I thought people stopped talking. But it did that thing where it says chat pause due to scrolling. So I must have accidentally hit my scroll wheel. So I am so far behind in chat right now. It's hilarious.
It'd be like that.
Let's see.
Soul joined the chat. Welcome, Soul.
Soup, what's going on, Soup? How you doing? We're talking about your kin here. We're talking about the rattling skeleton. So, you know, a little bit different than the Soup skeleton, but
fair enough.
We're with the rattling skeleton today. So there we go. What can't stack? Did I miss something there? Something Pokemon said something can't stack, but I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure temp HP doesn't stack.
Oh, so you only get one source of it. Whatever gives you that source is
whenever you get a new source of temp HP, it removes whatever your old temp HP was.
Temp HP max at the most in the moment. Gotcha. So the inspiring leader gives 5 temp HC. So yeah, that wouldn't really help with the armor of Agathis.
A 9th level warlock spell. I don't think you can cast warlock spells at 9th level because warlocks don't get 9th level slots.
That has to be a cast in a non-warlock class to be possible.
Yeah.
I love that it's a warlock spell that can't be cast by warlocks. How does that make sense?
Well, it just can't be cast at that level by warlocks.
Oh yeah. It's a hilarious that it's like make it make sense.
It is just a warlock spell, so unless you take something like magic initiate, which would give you this as another class,
and that's probably what it was used for, as people who took a magic initiate, it was a way for them to continue to elevate.
Wild. All
right, so yes, I like the gaze. I like the idea of taking the max HP. That's a brilliant idea. I just think it could be approached a little bit differently in terms of, I think the bonus action, and with the bonus action bonus action compiled with the low intelligence makes it a little bit just of a lackluster ability. It should, in that case, I feel like it should just be an AoE.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it just could be, like you said, a save, and you know, they save as soon as they get within 30 feet of it, and anybody who saves until it rolls a 5, they don't have to save again, right? So again, it could just be one of those things where it recharges every now and again, but if it's, because that's all it's going to do, right? The idea of this is all it's going to do is spam it out.
Yeah.
So you might as well just make it something that the entire team has to kind of fight against. Or,
yeah,
like I said, make it more of an actual gaze attack that shuts someone down.
And when you think about like the logistics and like the logic of a creature itself, like it's going to have things built into what it does that are advantage or are an advantage to itself, right? Like it's gonna have skills that it knows how to use, right? You know, like the what's the cat that can multiply itself? I keep forgetting. Not the Craig cat. The thing that basically gives itself a mirror image. I can never remember. It's like one of the most basic. It look panther-like. It's got a bunch of tails.
Oh, Displacer Beast.
Yeah, Displacer Beast. Like that Displacer Beast, it knows what it's doing. It knows when it's using it. It knows how it's using it, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not like super smart, like that's its instinct, right?
Yeah, it's part of it's built.
So
yeah, I kind of see where you're going with that one. But as a bonus action, I still don't think it's a problem as a bonus action.
Agreed.
Just a small tweak to how you want to approach it. And then we get the legendary actions now. So the Gasha-Dokuro, still the body, can take 3 legendary actions. So that was different than the legendary resistances.
Correct.
3 legendary actions, choosing from any of the options below. Only 1 legendary action option can be used at a time, and only at the end of another creature's turn. I think that's just standard for legendary actions.
Correct.
And then Gasha-Dokuro regains spent legendary actions at the start of its turn. Okay.
Does it regain all?
It says
I think it might.
So Basically can do any amount of these during a whole turn.
Got you.
Okay, so Breath of Undead, recharge of 6. I'm not sure what recharge of 6 means.
I'm gonna look that up to see if I can clarify
60-foot cone of necrotic breath weapon summons 4d6 skeletons within the cone's area. Visually, this breath looks like a dark fog that lingers for 1 round, and the skeletons summoned are heavily obscure.
Is the fog only there for 1 round, or the skeletons only there for 1?
The fog is there for 1 round, and then the 46 skeletons remain, but is also a necrotic breath weapon. But it doesn't necessarily do damage. It just says necrotic breath that summons them. So realistically, it's just a summoning breath weapon. It's not a damage dealing breath weapon.
Okay.
Because it doesn't say, like, the fog doesn't show any damage. It's just obscure.
Interesting. Okay. And so just 4d6 skeletons?
4d6, yeah.
Okay.
The next one is Absorption of the Forsaken. Any skeletons not defeated within 2 rounds of being summoned by the breath weapon are inhaled and absorbed by the body and regenerate 2d4 plus 5 hit points for each skeleton.
That's a cool mechanic.
So that definitely that's starting to give me like World of Warcraft vibes in terms of like boss battle.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing is going to summon out a bunch of skeletons, and it's up to you. Basically, it's summoning them to heal itself, but you have to decide to go take them out to not let it heal. That's very video game boss battle.
Yeah.
So very, like you were saying, it's very stagey, right? You're feeling like these have layers to this battle.
My question would be, does the breath, I'm assuming you can't use that 2 turns in a row.
I mean, he says he regains spent legendary actions at the start of its turn, and they can take 3 legendary actions. So
you could technically,
as far as I know, as long as someone acts 3 times, they can do all 3 every round.
But you cannot absorb.
No, only
you can't absorb unless they've been out on the field for 2 rounds.
Yes, and only, yeah. So any skeletons not defeated within 2 rounds of being summoned. So yeah, that would mean that technically round 1 I summon skeletons. Round 2 I summon skeletons. Round 3 I summon skeletons. Round 4 I absorb skeletons from round 1.
Got it.
Round 5 I summon skeletons and absorb skeletons from round 2. If I'm reading that correctly, that's exactly what I can do. Is I can summon skeletons every round, and after 2 rounds I can start absorbing the ones that I did several rounds ago.
Well, so
I don't know what the recharge of 6 means.
I'm about to let me see if I can find that.
And then we get to the Chiming Scream. Now this says it costs 2 actions, which again I don't understand what that means. Like 2 legendary actions of the 3.
Oh, that's what I was talking about you before. So the recharge of 6 is you roll a d6, and if you hit a 6,
okay. So
that's when you can get it back.
Breath of Undead is done, it only recharges on a roll of a 6. Absorption of Forsaken is basically anytime after 2 rounds.
And for clarity,
Chiming of Screams takes 2 of the 3 legendary actions.
Correct. And for clarity, you can only roll that d6 at the start of your turn.
Gotcha.
So you don't get to so theoretically, because this is my thought process. Can I use breath at the end of your turn, and then another breath at the end of his turn, and then another breath at the end of his turn, all before I even take my turn?
Gotcha.
Because this is in between your opponent's turns, these legendary actions.
Yeah, anytime someone makes it.
But that's the recharge of the 6 helps it a lot.
It's only at minimum once per turn.
Correct.
But if you do keep recharging it, you could just blast out skeletons every turn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is a small chance of abuse by the team if they roll.
You would have to keep track of how long these skeletons have been out there, though. That might be a little, but...
All right, so Chiming Scream costs 2 legendary actions of your 3. The Gasha-Dokuro screams loudly, causing fear and dread to all creatures that can hear it within 90-foot sphere around it. All creatures take 3d8 thunder damage and are frightened for 1 minute. A creature frightened in this way can make a DC 12 Wisdom saving throw at the end of each of their turns. On a success, their condition ends early. Additionally, attacks on any creature frightened by this effect automatically hit, but cannot crit.
Interesting.
So it screams 90-foot radius, 3d8 thunder damage, and 1 minute of frightened. DC 12 save out.
Is there any initial save? Or does this just happen?
No, it just happens. As far as it reads, it just happens. So Cosmic, let us know if you intended this to have an initial save, but as it reads, it just does this.
Because imagine if it does this on
no initial save. So it can literally just spam this out again, this one it can spam out every round. So it'll only give you one because you're not wasting, but you're using your other, so you're using 2 for this. So that means you only have 1 left. Yeah. But then the next round, you regain your legendary actions.
Yeah.
So again, every round, it could spam this and a skeleton if it recharged. But you could spam skeletons and then immediately do this. It does say all creatures, so it does include its own skeletons. Technically, it does say all creatures. So if its skeletons were out or any enemies were out, all of them would take that damage. But I mean, 3d8 thunder damage at this level, I'm not that sweating. Like, it kind of makes sense, you know.
Also, again,
like
that
the scream makes sense.
Just for what this creature is and how big it is, that saving throw feels mad low.
DC 12.
Yeah, like just in general. Like, I'm not saying that like I want it to be stupid hard, but it just feels like at least like
scary. It doesn't feel like I'm worried about it, especially
this late level.
At least a +1 to their wisdom.
Honestly, like at this point in time, I feel like most players are gonna have at the very least a proficiency bonus of at least like a 4, maybe a 5 plus whatever your stat is. And what is that, a wisdom save? So
Seismic is saying that information. He is saying that the DC 12 is based on its stats, so that is the correct math according to him.
Okay,
based on its stats.
But wait a second.
But he's also saying that he's throwing it in there because there are so many ways to be immune to the frightened conditioned, and that's where
if you have a paladin on your team, this does nothing.
But that's again the idea, though, that we're creating this because there's so many ways to be immune to it that's not a concern. But it's like, I don't know if that's the way to approach making this.
I agree. It feels a little metagamey.
To be completely honest, like I haven't been quite on Pokeniener's side in chat just yet, but this is the first time I'm like, I kind of agree with Pokeniner. This feels like it's anti-player. It feels like it's being built against kind of certain player builds. Like with that mindset of there's so many ways to get around being frightened. It's like, so is that what you're trying to do? Like I just, it's a very unique approach because it doesn't feel like it's being approached from what completes the build, but more of what presents an obstacle. And I don't know if this is really presenting a proper obstacle. Like you said, a lot of these are, I mean, like you said, that DC is pretty low. And if Cosmic's looking at this as, well, there's so many ways to be immune from frightened, it's like, so then why is the DC so low? Like, if you say yourself that it's easy to not be frightened, then wouldn't you make the save harder for those that do get frightened? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's a weird approach to say it should be easier because it's also easy not to be affected by it.
Right.
It's like that logic to me seems backwards. It seems like if it's easy to get around it, then you should make it harder when it does affect you.
Right.
So that's yeah. So let's see. So the breath weapon, the summoning with the breath weapon, no changes. I like that. There's no changes there. Like summoning with a breath weapon, recharge on a 6, 46 skeletons, and they're obscured for 1 round. I'm okay with that. I really am. I got no problem.
I really am. 60-foot cone. Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
It just basically gives the DM an option to spread them out.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do damage. It's just, I can now spread out. So even though the body isn't intelligent, the DM could metagame it and be like, well, they're all going to appear in front of the paladin. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a little bit of an option there. Yeah, so no changes to Breath of Undying. The absorption of the Forsaken. You know what I would like to see instead for this? Because I was doing the math, right? That's 13 hit points per skeleton, right? And at max we can get 46. So that's a lot. That's a pretty decent amount of hit points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means it can absorb, I mean, all of them that are out there. So that's a pretty decent amount. I mean, what is that, like, assuming that you only got, let's say, So 46 skeletons. So let's say you got the max of 24 skeletons times 13 hit points. So that's 312. So at its best, it gets about, I mean, on average, it'll get about half of its hit points back by doing this.
I will say,
like on a good day, it would get about half its hit points back.
If it has to be out for 2 full rounds, a skeleton's AC or a skeleton's hit points are 13. Oh, yeah, most people at this, you can one-shot a skeleton.
Okay, so yeah, so even at that case, so yeah, you might not even be getting that much back. So I would even think that as another option, maybe absorb the Forsaken. Maybe it's a legendary action that can be done immediately, so it doesn't have to wait 2 rounds, right? But you change it to, instead of all of them, I can summon up to 46, right? As one legendary action that recharges on the 6th roll.
Mm-hmm.
But another legendary action that I get every round is that I can grab up to 2 skeletons within range and eat them.
Interesting.
And how many hit points does skeletons have?
13.
So what if you could earn like double the hit points per one eaten? Or make the hit points to where, because I like this amount of hit points. When you calculate that out, I get that if you could consume them all, they'd basically get him nearly full.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be really interesting. More is make the breath weapon to where you can summon a bunch of skeletons, but then immediately be able to start chomping them up, but only 2 at a time, because you still have to grab them and eat them.
Yeah.
So the idea behind the distance being a problem plus killing the skeletons off, instead of having this 2-round thing where you're basically just not fighting the boss and you're fighting the skeletons, it's more of a, because like you said, you're going to hit him in 1 hit. So that tells me it's more of a time waste. It's a stop focusing on the boss to not let him heal, and it's just going to prolong the match. But if he could do it immediately, it is more of a dynamic, okay, we really have to kill these things before he eats them all.
Yeah.
And for the DM point of view, it gives you 2 options to use the skeletons for. Extra damage and extra help, or to get health. So you have 2 dynamic plays here.
Interesting.
And I feel like that would make these legendary actions feel better.
I do
summoning
like
them. I like the recharge, but I do kind of like the absorption of just being he's literally gobbling them up and eating them, but he doesn't remove all of them all at once, because that's also kind of weird that they just all disappear too, right? So again, more dynamic of a battle. I kind of like the idea that the skeletons would stay and he can just individually eat them up. And then if he eats them, he basically gets equivalent to whatever health they have left. You know what I mean? So if you've attacked one but didn't kill it, it's not going to get the full amount of health. It's only going to, because again, they're bones or whatever, so they only get so much. So I wouldn't be too upset if absorption shifted that way. I think it would feel a little bit better. The screaming, the chiming screams, I don't know. What are you thinking about that one? Like, I don't mind the AoE kind of stuff. Like, I don't mind, especially like something like this, like screaming and frightening you.
I don't mind the AoE.
I feel like the thunder damage isn't bad. 3d8's not terrible.
I don't mind the thunder damage.
It feels pretty good, especially if this thing can be done every round. Like, if he could just spam it, that's not a bad amount of damage. The frightened for 1 minute, though, I know a lot of things can like save out of it. I mean, it does make sense though. It actually does make sense for the build.
I'll say what hurts me about the frightened for 1 minute is the fact that you get automatic crits. Now, oh wait, no, it says, but it cannot crit.
Yes. So you automatically get hit though. You will get hit no matter what. And this thing has reach on all of its attacks.
So I'll say this, as long as only the Dokuro gets an automatic hit.
Because it does say additionally attacks on any creatures frightened by this attack automatically hit. This is any attack.
That's why I'd be like, I don't think the skeletons should get automatic hits. I think that the Dokuro can get automatic hits. That's fine. Even his like big slams and stuff like that. Okay, I get that. But when it comes to like the little ones like that, I mean, granted, like they're little, it's not going to be that crazy, but that's a lot of action economy that's just hurting you no matter what.
Can you check chat and check Pokemon's math here? I'm not familiar with how the 5th edition math's supposed to be.
So
Pokemon recalculated the DC for this.
Correct. So basically what he was saying is if this is a constitution, which is why I was confused by what he was talking about this is based upon the creature's stats. Because it'd be really hard to base this on the creature's stats because you don't know what stat it's based on. When you're a spellcaster, your DC is based upon your spellcasting class. Right, so if you're a cleric, it's based upon your wisdom, right? There are certain things like monks. Monks have a not a spell save DC, but they have a DC. Theirs is based on, I think, their dexterity or their wisdom, one of the two. But it's based upon like what you are as a class. So my question is, what is he basing it on? Theoretically, Pokeniner is saying if it's based on Constitution, then it would be a 19 instead, because this guy's Constitution is what, a 20 right now? So you're going to get a +5 to Constitution, a +6 because of your proficiency bonus, and then you're going to have an 8 on top of that, right? So, yeah. Hold on. So we got 5.
He said that was 19 or 8. Yeah, 19. DC of 19 is what he predicted.
16. I think it would be a 17. I think it'd be a 17 because it'd be 9 + 8.
Oh yeah, thinking about Dragon Breath. Yeah, that makes sense because it is based on your Constitution. So if that was the case, I think it would be better
if it was based on Constitution.
Yeah, because then I'm trying to think. Well, because we also have to look at like it's not a huge amount of damage, but this thing technically, if it really wanted to, could spam this every round.
Yeah,
and it's an automatic hit. It's an automatic.
And not only can it spam it every round, it's everyone that can hear it.
Yes, and that's every round. And I mean, we're 3d8 thunder damage. I mean, you're looking. I mean, it's not. It's. I mean, you know, that's not. That's what 20 or 34, or no, 24 damage. So it's like, yeah, it's 24 damage, but for high level characters, that's not a lot. But when you can do that to 5 people all at once,
unblockable.
Yeah, and it's
5 people unblock. Like having unblockable AoE damage every round is
making
wild.
Them not be able to react immediately after that, right? Like imagine the first player character attacks and it immediately uses this action and frightens everyone. That means none of them are going to attack it for the rest of the round, and it gets automatic hits on every.
Well, so it's not that you can't attack it; it's that you have disadvantage attacking it, and you can't move closer to it.
And it's already very difficult because it has a 22 AC, and you'd have to hit it with radiant damage, but it would have to again protect itself with the radiant damage or with its bones to then make it immune. I feel like there's a lot of, because again, I'm looking at it now, I'm looking at it not so much from the player point of view, but from the DM point of view trying to play this. And it's like, how am I going to run this, right? Like, how am I going to set this up to where at what point is it the first radiant damage? Is it a third radiant damage? Like, at what point does it protect itself against radiant damage? Does it have to be weak enough? Does it have to take so much damage? And then when it does that, again, everyone's going to pile on it. But the moment it protects itself with the bones, it should immediately follow that up with the chiming screams in order to make sure that it has, because that's how I would play it, right? You would protect yourself with the radiant so you become invulnerable, but then immediately the first attack you would do the scream so that for 1 minute you're protected, and that 1 minute would overlap with the 1 minute that you are protecting yourself from radiant damage.
Everybody's gonna be at a disadvantage attacking you, even though that you get normal damage for all those things.
So again, this is like one layer after another, being like, even if you overcome one thing, like even if you overcome the shield with a radiant attack and it now becomes vulnerable, it hits you with the frightened. Now that's another layer of you're not really getting.
It's harder for you to get at it.
And yes, there are a lot of ways to to be immune to frightened, but even if only 1 or 2 of your characters are doing that, it's only 1 or 2 characters that have a minute to get that much damage out, to get 300 points of damage out. Was it 500?
500, yeah.
500 points of damage in a minute. I know a minute's a long time, but it's like, I don't know if I feel that this is very dynamic, as I feel like it's just very much of a slog. You know what I mean? I feel like it's one of those, aha, we finally got the thing. It's like, nope, that's another one. That's like, okay. It's, I don't want to say it's punishing. I don't know how rewarding it feels depending upon, are you going to give them this information up front? Because again, if you tell them about the radiant damage and then they do the radiant damage and then they get hit with the scream, then they realize doing the radiant damage didn't really do a whole lot for them. It's like, what is that really telling the players? Like, you learned for nothing, or just that learning didn't matter because it had another thing up its sleeve?
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on here that I feel like the best way for this to happen is for the players to know about it. But if they know about it, you're not, as a DM, you're not getting all the benefits. So maybe the best place is not necessarily a boss fight, but even a pre-boss fight. You know, if you were going after the BBEG,
interesting,
and right before you got to him, his cult members shut him away, and they summoned this thing to stop you.
Guard to like get to him.
This I could see much more as like a BBEG guard. This doesn't feel like the end battle. It just feels more, I don't want to say it's a time waster, but this definitely feels more like a
resource sapper. Yeah,
it feels like this is intended for you to feel the burn as you're trying to get to the top of the hill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not the summit, but it's the burn right before the edge.
Okay.
All right, and now we finally get to the core. So now we get a little bit of a difference.
Yes.
I'm gonna step away to use the restroom real quick, and then we will start on the core.
I do want to make a quick caveat, and Cosmic, please let me know throughout here, because this would be the biggest issue that I think I might have had with the translation of your submission to actually putting it on this format here. Is there were a lot of elements in your original submission that says this applies to the body only, this applies to both, this applies to the core only. So I want to make sure that everything that exists here applies to the core, right? There'll be some things that are duplicated. Some of the features and stuff that we saw earlier on the body are also going to repeat here in the core, but there'll be unique ones that are only for the core, and there'll be other ones that are not supposed to be included on here. So let me know if, as we're going through here, something that shows up on the core is not supposed to be, and definitely let me know if something that I do have on, or that I don't have on the core should be. You know, just because that's the only piece that I might have. I believe I did it correctly, but we'll obviously see when we go through it. So,
and one thing I wanted to add too, going back to the movement. I know we were talking about this because 5 feet of movement seems a little bit weird, like total 5 feet, right? Like if it's a 5x5, it should be able to move its equivalent of one of its own body weight or its own body length. So at least 25 feet,
right?
But one thing I was thinking of too is I remember when we first, when Cosmic first brought this up, right? I had brought up an idea of like what I envision would be really cool because we've never seen this before and we haven't seen it yet. And I wanted to add that in because when we were talking about its movement from going from 5 to 25, so it can at least move its whole body mass or its body width in movement. I had brought up before about the idea of a large creature essentially having multiple ground contact points. So it's like there's the main body, but like if it doesn't have legs, how is it moving? It must be dragging itself.
Sure.
So imagine if we added in the 25 feet of movement. So again, if it's a 5x5, it can at least move, one space over its length. But imagine that when it moves, if you just added in verbiage that when moving, both hands have to be placed on the ground to crawl, and therefore two by two while it's moving, like for that round, two 2x2 hands are making contact with the ground, making another point of melee contact.
Interesting.
So like when it wants to move, it takes like maybe a half a round or a whole round to actually move the 25 feet. So it has to grab to the ground and then drag itself. But as it's doing that, this 5x5 is moving across the ground, but it put its hand over here and a hand over here. So now there's a 2x2 hand.
Maybe that's its dash action, is it spends its action moving its full length in a direction, right?
That could be kind of cool.
Otherwise it's just shimmying
and
here and there.
That for that round while it's dragging itself, the hands are weak points, right? Because that's what I was originally thinking about, this giant thing moving as it has to like crawl, and every time these touch the ground, they're a point of attack. But otherwise it's way up here in the air, you can't attack the hands. So I was just thinking about that as I was coming back we didn't talk about it, but yeah, I'd love adding something in where it makes contact with the ground as it moves, or when it dashes, instead of moving 5 feet normally, when it dashes, it does that one big giant crawl. But for that round, you have 2 points of contact.
I almost like the idea that you got to make your players take advantage of that when they can. So it's like, if he moves this round, or they do something to like hope or make sure that he moves this round, be like, all right, as soon as his hands contact the ground in order to move, I'm going to use my reaction. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to cleave this thing. I'm going to try and...
If you do the dash action with this pull mechanism, or mechanic, I should say, that's when you can add in the trample. The trample feature is when he dashes across that 25 feet that he's going to drag. If anyone's in that area, you're getting taken. You're getting taken out. And you can even say he moves 5 feet or 1 square for every initiative that passes.
Interesting.
So you can say if you're initiative 1, you're SOL, but if you're initiative 5, you better have movement as your first.
Oh, I kind of like that.
So you could just kind of do this thing where at the start or at the end of his turn he begins his dash action, and then who's next in initiative? Are you within 10 feet? Nope, you're safe. What do you do?
Imagine that. Imagine if its dash action, on its turn, it uses one slam attack or one of its attacks to attack a certain spot, and then another one to attack another certain spot, and then at the end of its turn, it starts dragging.
And then you start at the top of the initiative, and every initiative number it moves 5 feet.
Yeah.
For the rest of that next turn. That could be actually kind of dope. And again, if you're in its way when it does it, and you are above a small size, you have a saving throw versus trample. Then you get knocked prone, take damage, and if you are knocked prone,
I think that could be cool.
You take damage for every 5 feet. It has to go to pass you over you. So if you're only 10 feet into it, you have to do 15 feet.
What happens if it ends its turn on top of you?
I would say that at that point it acts as difficult terrain. If you're not small, you basically are.
You got to climb your way out of it.
Yeah,
you got to find your way out of it.
Difficult terrain.
Okay.
Wouldn't damage you like
spike growth.
Like spike growth, but it would be difficult terrain nonetheless.
Sure. Okay. No, that sounds legit. That sounds legit.
I kind of like that. Oh, Pokémon, you weren't here for that. So yes, Colossal is not a standard, but because this is depicted as a 5x5, it's technically the next size up. So it's more of a, we did mention this at the very beginning, but it is more of a homebrewed custom size, going up from the 4x4 to a 5x5.
Although I will say, I feel like Colossal shouldn't be associated with the core. I feel like theoretically,
this is the body.
Oh, this is the body. Yeah. Okay.
But I also feel like Undead Monstrosity also kind of covers the size. So, it is one of those, areas there isn't, there isn't really anything that you get beyond a 4x4. Like, I mean, I get there are things that are supposed to be bigger. Like, again, Trask is what? I think a Trask is bigger than a 4x4.
I think Trask is colossal, or not colossal.
I could have sworn
gargantuan.
Like lore-wise, Trasks are supposed to be like just absolutely impossible.
Trask. Yeah, they're theoretically gargantuan in
but I think they're
but like lore wise,
I think they take up the whole thing. So yeah, that's kind of one of those things where it's like D&D could do a better job a little bit at expanding some of the larger creatures, but hey, what are we gonna do?
Fair enough.
Okay, so moving on to the core, we have so the core is technically considered medium, so I don't know really what that means in terms of like, is it just the inside of the bones, or is there like a piece to the whole structure that's considered the core? But it's considered medium. Undead Monstrosity. So this armor class is 20. It's a magical crystal. Okay, so there's some sort of magical crystal we're dealing with. 240 hit points, and it hovers with the body. So I'm assuming it's like in the rib cage or inside like the spinal cord. It's inside somewhere. There's this gem. That's like, it's powering. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Is could be in the skull, could be in the rib cage, but imagining there's this gem that you have to go after. The gem has a strength of 9, a dex of 17, a constitution of 16, an intelligence of 20, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 8. It has skills, Arcana plus 11. It is vulnerable to radiant damage. It is resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. It is immune to acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, necrotic, poison, psychic, and thunder damage. I don't know about thunder damage.
Well, thunder damage is hearing, so if it doesn't have ears, that would kind of make sense.
Think so. Yeah, I guess that would be force damage. But then force damage, I feel like, should be maybe not immune. Because it's a crystal. You would think that force is...
Yeah.
Condition immunities. It can't be grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, stunned, or unconscious. Those are all valid. It has blind sight of 15 feet and a passive perception of 11.
I'm curious if that 15 feet expands beyond the body itself.
I think so. I think that's the idea, is that
it can just like
it knows when
if somebody's in the body or something like that, if somebody's coming after it.
Yeah. Special spell immunity. The core is immune to all conditions and damage from spells cast using spell slots of 4th level and lower. Oh, okay. So it can only be damaged by 5th level and higher spells. It can only be damaged, and it can only have immunities cast upon it.
So conditions and damage from spells higher than 4th level.
Yeah.
Got it.
5th level and higher. Okay. Spell resistance. The core has advantage on saving throws against spells. So
same as the other
spells. Slow immunity. The core can't be affected by the slow spell. Negative healing. The core is immune to necrotic damage and heals from it. Core regeneration at the start of each of the core's turns. So I'm assuming that, is that 2 different creatures that you're dealing with, or is it like once the skeleton's gone?
I kind of feel like this is one of those situations where it's like the core takes its turn directly after the skeleton. Like they kind of move on the same initiative, but they are theoretically different entities doing different things.
So at the start of its turn, it passively heals 20 hit points as it feeds and absorbs the combined fear of all creatures that it can see. I really feel like that should be only when anyone's frightened. If
especially if it's based off of fear like that.
Yeah, because again, you have the outside body that can cast frightened. It would make sense that for 1 minute the core can regenerate off of anyone who's frightened. That makes way more sense than.
And then I would associate it with a certain amount of hit points per people that are frightened.
Yeah.
Right, because otherwise it wouldn't just be like a static number if one person.
10 per person that's frightened.
Exactly.
I'd be fine with that. If you just said 5 or 10 hit points per person that's frightened.
What's the hit points on this thing again? It's 2 something?
240.
240.
So if you did 10 hit points per person frightened by, the outside, I already forgot what we called it. This is the core. This was the body. Yeah. So if the body does its, power ability and frightens people, that's, I think, when the core should regen. Also, it makes better sense lore-wise too, because again, we talk about this with some players get a little bit antsy when they're told things are happening, and it's like, so you're basically saying we're all afraid, no matter what.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's a big deal, but some players don't like that. At least with this, if you are under the frightened condition, you're feeding it, and that's more of the relationship between the body and the core, right? The body frightens things, the core feeds off that fright. That actually sounds better, I think, in my opinion, than it just always gets 20 hit points back.
Yeah.
It's just legendary resistances. It has 3 per day. It can use legendary resistance in the following ways. If it fails a saving throw, then it can succeed instead at cost of 1. And at the cost of 2, if it takes radiant damage, it can choose to use the bones.
So this was another aspect that I was talking about. A lot of the...
So it's the same exact thing.
It's the same exact thing. So a lot of what in Cosmic's original submission, there were certain elements that were said, this applies to the core only, this applies to the body only. Gotcha. Anything that didn't articulate that specifically, I put it on both. So I'm assuming this is for the body only. Now that I actually know what it is, because a lot of these I didn't actually read completely, but yeah, that's how I'm assuming. That's how I'm assuming this would operate. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Cosmic.
Yeah. Okay, so both of them can basically do. So it just comes down to whatever you're targeting, it will react the same way.
Yeah.
It will protect itself from that. Okay. The only difference I would like to see here, if we're gonna have it have the same ability, like if it can protect itself no matter what, the body or the core, one thing I would have liked to do is have some verbiage about what happens, like, because I don't know if the body is destroyed, the core remains, but it would be interesting to know, like, have verbiage that they can only do this if the body is still intact.
Interesting.
Like if you've destroyed the body, it can't use the bones, right? So just use an added verbiage just so you know that it's not a full copy paste, but it's hey, this can only work as long as it has the body to do this. And I'm also curious, does that mean that I could remove these? If these are 2 separate entities, can I teleport this thing away from it? It has spell resistance, but that doesn't mean I can't.
It won't be, if it's impossible to affect.
So if I teleport it away, then it can't use the bones, right? So again, I would like to make sure that it just chose some verbiage of while within the body, it can use the body's
okay.
defenses.
So there are 2 targets of the same creature, and it shares those abilities. That's kind of the
so
idea.
You can just target anywhere on the body, or you can target the core.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. I'm assuming, or I'm hoping at the very least, that there will be some advantage of taking out the core, right? Or maybe it'll make life easier to combat the body if you do take out the core.
The core is just like, it doesn't say taking out the core will take out the body, because that's what you would kind of assume from a video game, right? The body is protecting the core for a reason. But we'll see when we get to that. So actions, multi-attack. The core can make two, so the core can also make 2 attacks. So it also has arm. Okay, so this is just considering it's all one creature. It's different targeting points.
I'm assuming so. Because
so in that particular case, I kind of do think that it should have just been simplified to, instead of it being a whole separate thing, we should have just tacked on to the Gasha-Dokuro everything that we read before, and then just tack on it has a secondary target for XYZ reason, right? Like, it just seems like it's more messy to say that these are 2 completely different things, when it's more like you have the Gasha-Dokuro that we've already covered, but then it has this core piece that should have just said it has a different AC, different HP, and if it's destroyed first, it destroys the whole thing.
So Cosmic's clarification is, if the core is destroyed, or if the core is killed, the body is destroyed, but you'll gain less XP from killing just the core than you would have if you had killed the entire body.
That's kind of punishing. It's punishing people for being smart or playing the mechanics. Like, so again, that's basically saying if you play the mechanics the way you're supposed to, you'll get punished. And if you do it the hardest way possible, that's kind of like a Dark Souls approach to do the hardest thing possible and then you'll get rewarded. But if you do it the smart way that it was designed to be done, it's more punishing. And it's like, I kind of get that, right? The faster you do it, the less you learn.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really how D&D... That's not how players expect D&D to work.
Very much so.
I feel like if you threw that... Now, if that's how you normally run your games, right? Like, if this is a normal kind of way, that wouldn't be a problem. But I feel like for the average person, if they were going to throw this in a game, I feel like players would be very, very confused on how that works. And why they spent all that time researching it if the benefit was to run the slog, right? Like, why know that you can kill it quicker? That's like, again, that comes down to the metagame knowledge, because in the real world, you wouldn't think of it that way. But you are getting rewarded less for doing it better.
Yeah.
At that particular case, and what I also don't get too then is it's also kind of a trap, because it's only a 20 armor class, whereas the other one was 22?
Mm-hmm.
And it was 500 versus 240. So realistically speaking, it's like you're handing them the much easier way to win, but you're saying you shouldn't do it.
But you're saying you're not going to get nearly as much. You're not going to be rewarded for doing it.
So you shouldn't do the very... And I'm just kind of like, as a player, from a player point... Because I can see it from a DM point of view, like, I see the logic there, right? I don't disagree with the logic, but from a player point of view,
it does.
Why is that fun? Like, how is that fun from a player point of view? Like, you're basically saying that we spend 3 hours on this instead of 1 hour, and we'll get more XP. But why is that more fun when literally it's just harder to hit and more damage? You know what I mean? It's kind of like the same thing I say about video games, where I've never been on board with saying that just like when games say the difficulty increases, but all they do is give the enemies more health and do more damage. To me, that's not more difficult. That just makes the game... Yes, you can call it harder, but that's not more difficult. It's the same exact game. I just have to spend longer doing it, right? That's adding time. That's not adding difficulty. Having the enemies change how they act, going from a game that the enemies are dumb to the enemies will actually like hear you and chase you down and find you. That's a difficulty and change, right?
Yeah.
But the same exact game, the same response time, but their bullets do more damage, or you just have less health to begin with. It's a challenge, but it's not difficulty. You know what I mean? And I kind of feel like that's kind of what this feels like. Is it's a difficulty setting when you come into this. There's an easy setting and a hard setting. The hard setting isn't any more difficult. It's just going to take longer and it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
But it's not more difficult. It's the same exact fight, right? You have the same creature. It's just you're deciding, do I go after the 22-240? Or I mean the 22-40, or do I do the 22-500?
Yeah.
For more XP. That's because again, they do the same attacks, right? Like you even said, they're the identical thing. So all we're really getting here is an option of XP. kill it this way. And then on top of that, what happens if I get the body down to 50 HP, but then I killed the core? But with an AoE attack by accident, do I get less XP? Because I killed the core? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's messy because that's also assuming they only go after one. If they go after the body and then kill the core, are you going to reward them with less XP because they wasted, like, or are you going to be like, well, do you have to calculate how much of the body you destroyed and get that much XP, and then you get the full XP of the core?
Right.
It's I don't know if that's really the approach both DMs and players want, because again, all of it, even this part about the core and everything, all of that is dependent upon the players knowing all this information, right? It's dependent upon them knowing that this is how they have to approach this boss. If you go into this boss knowing nothing, and all you see is a giant skeleton with a crystal inside, what's their first instinct? Kill the crystal. So you're going to be punished for doing the most obvious thing that every video game every D&D game has ever taught you. But then if you don't know about it, you're also, you'll never be able to really utilize the radiant damage thing unless you get lucky, hit it with radiant damage, and it decides to do the bone thing. And then you have to go and hit it again, and then realize you're doing full damage. But then if you do know about all of this, you can't in-game tell them that there's less XP. So then imagine in-game you're telling them about this crazy creature that has this huge weakness. And then again, their natural instinct is to do it, and then you punish them with less XP. But then if you metagame it and tell them this option, then you're basically telling them super long fight, short fight, how much XP do you guys want this gaming session? There's not a lot here pushing a story, pushing the lore, and I don't know if I'm getting a lot of like challenge. Like it does a lot of damage. It's a damage dealer for sure. But is there a puzzle here? Is there a challenge here for the players? Like, run this as a DM real quick in your head. What are you wanting your players to learn from this or get out of it, other than it's a long fight? Because this is going to be a long fight. Let's face it. This is not a short fight. But what are they getting out of it? Like, they have to figure out the radiant damage. There's not a lot of movement going on. It has a bunch of range, and it has a spammy attack that just does massive amounts of damage no matter how far away you are. Like, unless you're an archer, you're going to be within 90 feet of this thing. Like, I mean, how many people are doing battle 100 feet away?
Yeah.
It's just not common.
The reality is, like, I cannot imagine this fight happening in, like, out in the open, like out under the moonlight. Like, I really imagine it's
like in a cave,
cave underground in somebody's lair.
And then again, let's also think about too, like, its biggest thing, arm swipes are pretty good. 48 plus 4 damage. The Shattering Slam is good, but also like the Chiming Scream, as much as like we're kind of worried about it, Silent Spell immediately takes care of Chiming Scream.
Yeah, I can't.
You cast Silent Spell and you stay outside of it, it can't do anything. So I think it's a 20 foot or 15 foot radius, or is it 30 foot?
Because seriously, if you drop silence on this thing and it can literally only move 5 feet at a time,
it's at least that one ability is taken care of. And that's kind of the thing. Like, if that one ability is taken care of with the silent spell, I'm it's a really cool concept. I'm just having a hard time understanding.
Yeah, it's a 20 foot radius. You have that thing wrapped for a while.
So I'm just like, so that takes care of that ability. And if you could just range attack it, and again, radiant damage is usually from range attacks. I mean, you can just cast a beam of, or what is it? Moonbeam?
Is Moonbeam radiant damage?
It is. Dude, you could just cast Silent and Moonbeam, and this thing can only move 5 feet, and you can just move Moonbeam over it the entire time. I'm pretty sure it's a concentration spell, and you can move it.
It is. You can move it.
And it's radiant damage, right?
I'm looking. It's radiant damage.
Dude, Moonbeam, Silent, this thing's fucking gone.
Wild.
It can't be restrained, but if it can only move 5 feet, I can.
Is the core also vulnerable?
Yeah.
To radiant?
So I'm just trying to
how would you as a DM play that? If you dropped Moonbeam on top of this creature, would both the body and the core take damage, or would you only give the damage to the body?
I would probably only give it to the body, unless you were specifically targeting the core and like it made sense, but I would probably only target the body. But either way, that would just be to guarantee, because if you can do Moonbeam and you can move it and it's concentration, as long as you're out of 60 foot range or 90 foot range, and what's the range on that?
On Moonbeam?
Yeah.
I think it's 60 feet. No, it's 120 feet.
So you can stay outside of its scream range, cast Silence, and cast Moonbeam, keep Moonbeam on it the whole time, force it to trigger its bone thing, get into its invulnerable stage, and then everybody wails on it. It's still going to take a long time.
It's still a numbers battle, but yeah.
It's just, but again, now that we've learned that, so we figured that out. That's really it though. Like, it's kind of a one solution thing. Like, there's other like combinations here, but you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of like, again, I not all of my combats have to be a puzzle and all of that other stuff, right? But especially this late in the game, I'm just wondering, what is this battle for? Again, this, to me, the best use of this right now that I can imagine as written is the battle right before the BBEG. It's the one, but again, it feels too much like a slog to be that, right? I would definitely lower the HP of it in order to do that, but I don't know where this fits. Like, I don't know what kind of situation where the players would come out of this and be like, oh, okay. Like, not saying that they wouldn't find it fun, but I just don't know what this is going to do for, other than, okay, you beat a battle. You know what I mean? You've beat a battle, now you can progress the story. That's kind of what it feels like. And I wish there was a little bit more to it, because I'm struggling to figure out where I would be able to apply this again, unless I was planning to heavily prep them for this battle. This is not like, because of the way that I do things in High Point, you kind of run into what makes sense.
Yeah.
This is not something I could just have sitting around, or a cult just ready to summon, and then just summon, and then it makes sense for a battle, right? It's just, there's so many other things that I'd rather summon than this. It just doesn't quite build a picture that I understand.
Yeah.
And then we do have a picture. Someone asked for the picture.
Yeah, Hecate was talking about that earlier.
Oh, Cosmic says it's after the BBEG. Super bosses can't be called such before the main plot is completed.
Interesting.
So this is supposed to be after a BBEG. So is this like were you intending this to be like a bonus fight then? Because I mean, if you're level 20, because it's definitely a level 20 fight. So if you're level 20, you've beaten the BBEG. Is this supposed to be like a? Because I know, like, in your realm, like, you have like you had like the main plot point for the goddess. Yep. And then there was like another thing you can do after that. But is that like what this is all supposed? So bonus fight, but optional.
Oh, so it is optional. Interesting.
And I don't know why I would do it then. Like, I don't know.
Unless there's like some specific treasure behind this thing that you really want, or you're just really trying to get the XP. But again, if you're already level 20,
but it's post BBEG, so what does it matter? Like, literally, what?
I mean, again, the story's over.
If
I mean,
this was
for prestige, or if it's for the namesake, or if it's for some like character plot or backstory or something, you know, like.
Yeah. Again, so like goes back to what I was saying. It's like, you'd really have to heavily put this in there as like.
There's got to be a reason. Yeah,
you'd really have to heavily make it like, plot oriented, because it feels like, I don't know what's enticing, unless you said like, unless there's a mythic epic treasure and this is what guards it, and it's totally optional, but just know that a giant sky like that could work, and I could see it before a BBEG, but after a BBEG, it definitely loses a lot of luster for me. Like, if this is a post BBEG. I'm not feeling it.
Pokediner says he'd walk in, do the first round, and be like, fuck this, I'm out. I'm walking out.
Yeah, I'm not sure I feel this as a post-boss fight. I'm not feeling like this. Because again, if I've just wrecked the BBEG, this isn't scary. Especially, like, to be honest, if I've just wrecked the BBEG and we're all at Capstone, there's nothing scary about this. This is just a long fight.
Unless the mindset is like, this is the only time you could do this fight. You're just finished the BBEG, so you're drained. So like, unless you're meant to do this on like low resources type deal, you're right. I'm not scared of this as is. Like, I could definitely do a lot for that.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of like, again, there would have to be a lot more on the DM to do this, like post game, leading up to a BBG maybe, but to be honest, like, I don't think I've ever had a BBEG that I've created that would look at this and think twice. Like, most of my BBEGs would laugh at this. Like, in terms of power scale, this is not BBEG level. Me. Like, this is getting up there. This is definitely boss battle, but this isn't end game boss. This is, I mean, again, a lot of it comes down to like the 500. Again, it's the slog. It's that 500 hit points. This is just going to take a long time. I mean, if you think about, even if you guys are hitting at your best, you're talking about between 40 and 60 points per character, depending on, what your class is at that level. Like on average, that's still going to take at, 500 points. That's still going to take at least 10 rounds.
Yeah.
At 50 hit points a round, that's 10 rounds. And yeah, you can do bigger amounts, but it can also heal. It also, like, I just feel like if with that much hit points and nothing really else going on, I'm not sure. Like, the abilities are really cool. I'm just not sure I'm seeing this as a whole boss, like a whole, like, final game boss. Marty says if you're gonna do a post BBEG fight, just throw a Trask at it. I mean, kind of, right?
I mean, like, lightweight.
Yeah. I mean, okay, even if, let's say you're really, really good into storytelling. Here we go. Let's say you're really deep into that storytelling lore. So the BBE, just finishing the BBEG isn't enough, right? You got to finish the story. So imagine during the BBEG fight, like, he's down to the last couple hit points. It's, it's going to be like last thing. And you're like, any last words? You do that. You do the role play, like, any last words, and he laughs at you. You're like, what do you have? You're done. Your kingdom's, you're doing the whole big, party thing of like, you're done. Like, we've destroyed your kingdom. And he just, the BBG keeps laughing. You demand, like, why are you laughing? And be like, because I've already released him. And then you find out after you kill him, he released this thing.
Yeah.
And that's the capstone is, you finally did your storyline, but now there's this thing in the background about to terrorize a whole city. And now you have to go stop it.
Yeah.
That could, if you were really, really good at a storyline, you could fit this in. But again, it goes back to that thing of, this is not something that I think everybody could just pick up and go with. This is very much something that has to be deep ingrained into that plot to make it make sense. I don't think this is something that people are going to hear about and go after. Because if they do, because again, you run into two issues. Either they know nothing about it and they're at the biggest disadvantage, or they learn about it, know everything about it, and I can't say that I see a whole lot of benefit. As a player, I don't know what would entice me to go do this. Like you said, like, some people are all about the notoriety and just saying that they took something down. Even if I was in a party like that, I don't know if at the end of this, I would be like, I don't know if this would be my favorite trophy. You know what I mean? It would just be like, yep, we took that down. I just feel like it could be more impactful to... I think it should be more impactful. I think that this could be more impactful towards a party. I feel like there's a lot of challenges being presented that it's not that they don't make sense together. It's just that I'm not seeing it put a picture together. I'm seeing that it works together, but it's not a picture.
There's that synergy. There's that idea of like everything coming together. I do agree with Serotonin. I really like a lot of the abilities that are in here. Yes. I love a lot of the ideas. I think they can be implemented a little bit differently, but I like what they're trying to do. Like their intent, I feel like is so cool and is honestly, some of them very specifically is missing in a lot of other aspects of D&D that I think you could do.
I'm definitely going to give it the inspiration point just because the large scale creatures we just don't get to see very often. And I do like the approach of the concepts, like the concept approach, the idea that this is kind of like a summons, the idea behind, like, I don't mind like having a weak point. I feel I'm not a big fan of the XP difference of the weak point. I feel like the weak point, like, again, just like in a boss battle, the weak point shouldn't, like, the weak point should be like more like the body has a 20 AC and 500 HP, but the weak point has a 25 AC but only 200 HP.
Interesting.
So it's going to be
way harder to hit, but it's going to be a lot less. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or have it to where the weak points, like the crystal, the core is only attackable when he does his shielding. Like he takes bone, like you only ever see
that
the
would
core.
Be cool.
So you don't even know it has a core, but the moment you do the radiant damage and it moves all of its bones to protect itself, cool. it reveals the core. And then you get like this other AC, HP, like, because again, that's kind of how you get it in video games, right? Like it'll break down and the back part will open, then you target that. So it's like, I like the creativity in the sides of it. I like the creativity in the approach. I'm also loving the fact that this does, like, some DMs do staged battles where things happen, but not a lot of, I think a lot of DMs have it in their head that it feels more like a video game stage, but not a lot of times it doesn't feel that way. It usually just feels like a new group of enemies or a new wave. But this feels like that. It feels like we're close to having stages of this battle. Like I'd almost like to, instead of like, again, the core, instead of it being a whole separate piece, I'd almost like that to be like a stage. Like if you get it to do the bone thing, which you can only get it to do once anyway. If you can get it to do that for the minute, the core is now exposed. But when it's not doing that, there is no core. It's not exposed. But then you could have like, once the body gets so hurt, maybe the core then gets exposed. So it's like you can have literal phases of battle.
I almost like the idea of anytime it uses like a legendary resistance or like it uses one of its like special abilities,
it reveals the
core,
like
and you can like use your reaction to try and you can use like an opportunity attack to try and hit,
almost like a quick time event. Like
exactly.
Like, and again, that would be kind of cool. Like literally say, hey, sick. Everybody has a free reaction to target the core if you have a ranged attack available. Like so again, if you have a weapon out that's not ranged, you can't do it unless you want to throw it. Yeah, but anybody who has a ranged ability, you get a free reaction right now because it core like that's a video game mechanic we never seen in D&D, which is giving people free reactions to a moment, right? I would love to see that in this. I feel like the approach is really unique. I think it's really creative, but I think the delivery is it's convoluted. You know what I mean? It's very like, from a DM point of view, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I don't know why I have a core and a body. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why they're separate. It should have just been, here's the Gasha-Dokuro, but it does have a weak point, right? It should have just been a piece of the Gasha-Dokuro, not like a core body. Unless you're gonna do these phases of combat where you have to take out the body, then the core.
Like, I understand, like, creating two different creatures because they have two different stats. Like, this one's got mental stats, the other one doesn't. This one's got whatever. Like, I understand, like, that, but it does very much feel like this is, like, they're just two different targets of one creature.
And the other problem with, you know, it's kind of like, what is it, Occam's razor? The thing where you can't, like, you know, add something into a story without coming back to it, like the whole don't add in a big plot point and not come back
without its purpose.
Or no, it's not Occam's razor, sorry, it's Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun is the don't have a loaded gun in a story that it never goes off, right? If you put a loaded gun in a story, it has to go off. That's the premise of Chekhov's gun, right? So when you tell me that I have a body and it has all these stats and then a core with all these stats, but the core never uses those stats, the core doesn't do anything the body doesn't do.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what I was hoping for, is there would be something in here that's like core specific
or something like that, right? And that, again, if we do that thing where it's like, okay, here's the body, here's the Gasha-Dokuro. If it goes below 100 hit points, the core is revealed, or when it does its shield, the core is revealed. Then you have this layered battle, and then only when the core is revealed can you attack it. And imagine on top of that, when the core is revealed, it has its own attacks. So the Gasha-Dokuro, when the core is not revealed, is all physical. But then imagine when the core is revealed, there's magic attacks and psychic attacks. That's where you know what I mean? Like,
that could be very cool.
There are better ways to approach a giant creature that has multiple targets than this. And I love the ideas and the creativity, but I think the end result, I think, could be clear. So
sure.
Definitely, it's giving me a lot of ideas, and I think there's a lot here that is worth keeping. I just think that the end picture, while everything comes together, I'm just not, again, all the pieces fit, but it's not a picture.
Yeah.
Like, all the puzzle pieces are there, but there's no picture for me. It's a bunch of stuff that works well, but I'm not seeing it all together. And you guys did ask for the picture, so this is the picture. And based off the picture, this is kind of why I was thinking about, like, you know, the dragging, because the arms are so far away from the body that maybe they should be points of contact on the ground. You know, you definitely think that this is the core inside here. So again, the idea that if it's going to protect itself, you would want, like, the ribs to spread open or something so the core gets revealed, like, or, you know, even have a mechanic where if you hit one of its eyes, like, it, you know, reacts and then that reveals its core, like it comes up and covers its face.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God, dude, like we talked about, like, the bone, you know, it covers itself with bones. Like, what if its whole thing was like you get it with radiant damage and then it has to cover its eyes because it's blind, and because it covers its eyes, its ribs open up because it's like reeling back, and that's when you can shoot it. Like, there's a lot of different ways to approach being able to do that. but I applaud Cosmic for definitely going after such a large boss creature in this way. Like I really do applaud the attempt. I don't know how much I'd be able to use it as is.
But yeah, no, it definitely gives me a lot of.
And I will say this too, like balancing wise, I think the only thing that we agreed upon that's not balanced is it feels too easy, like the saving throws.
Yeah,
it's not like usually balancing is an issue because it doesn't feel like it, like all of this stuff works well with itself, but it just doesn't feel, it feels not, the abilities don't feel powerful enough for how long it's going to take to kill it.
Sure.
And it's like, it just doesn't feel like it's a match for itself.
I will say the way that the gaze works feels a little out of place. You know, messing with temporary hit points, the fact that it's a bonus action. Like, I mean, like, yeah, I get like reducing hit point maximum. That's definitely, I like that. But it just, I like what it's trying to do. It just feels a little bit out of place.
Now, dude, what if we, again, just adding the thing. So it can do the scream that can frighten people, right? What if this gaze tapped into that to where if it screams and you become frightened, it can then use its gaze on anybody that's frightened. And if they're frightened and it uses its gaze on you, they lose the permanent HP. Again, your will to live.
Yes.
Your will to fight.
That would be cool.
So those can just stack. So
yeah,
you scream, you frighten them. And then again, if you do the core that has its own magic, the core can cast fright.
And then it knows who's frightened by it. And then it's like, boom, I got you. Boom, I'm after you.
Because that's more of a magic pool than it is an intelligence thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I could even see that where the Dokuro, the Dokuro gaze is attached to whoever has the frightened condition. They can gaze, and then that's when they'll become paralyzed. And on top of that, they start to lose. Yeah, there could be so much to interplay with that.
Interesting.
And yeah, I really do like the legendary actions too. Like I kind of agree with Pokenander that throwing out the skeletons isn't a huge game changer. Like it's not really impactful except for the chance for healing. And so
I'll say,
while I do like the concept of healing, I will agree with Pokenander that the skeletons themselves aren't a lot, which means that it's almost kind of one of those, should there be more because they're so easy? Kind of like minions. At this stage, should there be more, or should they just be less but more powerful? So
I was going to say, I wouldn't mind them being something scarier than skeletons, right?
And it's having like less of them. So because I still like the idea of the Gasha-Dokuro being able to heal off of them, but I still think it should be limited to like what it can grab.
Sure.
So if you only have like maybe 4 to 6, but they gave 50 points back each. So a little bit harder to hit, but you could still hit, you still be able to take them out in 1 or 2 hits.
And I like the fact that I'll say the biggest thing that I like about the quantity of them is it messes with action economy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, before this, every single attack is focused on you. Now, I'm encouraged to clear these guys out.
Even if it's only going to be 1 hit per character, it's still 4d6 of them.
All those hits aren't going to him.
That's true.
All those hits are,
and so like makes it more of a time waste, which is not the part that I like, but it is partly dynamic to actually have this. And that's what I do like about it. Like this feels like one of those layered things. When he does this ability, like that's a whole new stage to the fight, right? Again, it reminds me a lot of World of Warcraft and how like raids and boss battles work in there. Because I watch Vixie play it a lot, and how it like stages and how it telegraphs what's going to happen.
Yeah,
and how it does stuff like this, where it'll push something out and then reabsorb it later, so you have to shift focus. Like,
gosh, I love that.
Like I said, I think that the legendary actions are great. Just some minor tweaks, just make them slightly more impactful either against us or to the concept. Because I do feel like, yeah, even with 46 skeletons lasting 2 rounds, I mean, so even if you get the max, that's kind of the weird part, is like, even if you get 2 attacks per round or can hit 2 of them per round, you only get 2 rounds out of a party of 6. That means each of you would have to go. Yeah, even at a party of 6 for 2 rounds, each of you would have to heal 2 each round to wipe them all. So you'd have to have like fireball, AoE
yeah.
Each of you would have to take the equivalent out of 2 each per round
Sure.
over the 2 rounds if he rolled max. So it's not undoable, but again, I just don't know if it's super impactful on the match itself. But if it could immediately start gobbling them up, it would be, I think, way more dynamically available.
Yeah.
And definitely put the pressure on, oh, he's immediately healing, and we got to stop that.
Yeah, especially if you made it like within range, at the very least, you'd know which ones to focus on first. Because if you can just suck them all up, then
yeah, it's just gonna go. Yeah, it just doesn't matter. But if you can at least like know which ones he can grab, and you could also have like if he's grabbing them, he can't attack. So that's like a whole round he's wasting.
Yes.
To feed. Because again, I'm trying to think of like, this is already gonna take forever. So what can we do to give the players a few more jabs? So taking him out of not being able to attack every round too, because he is throwing out a lot of damage, right? And it's just, I feel like definitely could go wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too, is you could make this go right for you very quickly, but realistically, again, it's if you don't get him to do the bone thing, if you don't have radiant damage, or if you fuck up that situation, you are just wailing it. You're just beating on a brick wall until it goes down.
Yeah.
So all of that in mind, okay, so definitely getting the inspiration point, because this definitely gives me ideas for larger creatures. Like, it's definitely given me a lot of ideas for how to approach larger creatures. Cosmic says the OG version was 3d4 summon skeletons, but it felt too few for the cone size. I agree, so buffed it to the 46. So Pokemon, yeah, we're not really saying that anyone's going to be caring about the skeletons attacking them. We're not really worried about the skeletons attacking. The whole point about why the skeletons become a concern is because of the healing factor.
Yeah, it's like the damage that you're doing to this creature is like being wasted because it can just heal itself, right?
Yeah, because that's the whole thing is, so yeah, the skeletons aren't a concern. They're not impactful in terms of what we're worried about for us. But if this thing pulls out 24 skeletons and
I just keep wailing on it.
Yeah, in 2 rounds, he's going to get 24 times 13 hit points back. That's why you want to focus on the skeletons. Now, if he only brings up 2, you'll probably just ignore him.
Yeah,
like he's only going to get 26 hit points back. I can do that in 1 attack. But when it comes down to what I calculated that out, it was like over 200. Yeah, when he could potentially get over 300 hit points back, that's why you would want. That's the intended the intention of the skeletons, is not, hey, here's a whole new army you have to face. It's if you don't take these out, this fight's going to take even longer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's kind of what I'm taking the most issue with, is this feels like the entire fight is just designed to make it take longer.
Yeah,
like
it's lightweight, like a stall tactic, which would make sense if it was a pre-BBEG and he's trying to do something, if it's ritual, whatever the case may
exactly,
be.
You're
like,
just trying to take time. Oh, even better. Like, yeah, you have like 1 hour and this thing gets in front of you or something like that, and it's just taking, it's just chipping away at your clock.
I'm just sitting here slogging, man.
Yeah. I mean, Pokemon are saying like, why not just have a heal effect? Why do the extra stage? I mean, I get you, but I kind of dig the extra stage, like extra level, just because it does feel like a new type of combat. Yes, it could just have a legendary action that heals it, but to be completely honest, this gives
you a way to combat that. This gives you a way to say,
and an interactive way at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not against doing it like this. I'm not against this approach. It's just that maybe the numbers just aren't quite right. Like, again, I wouldn't mind it being more formidable creatures. So, fewer of them, but more formidable. Because I do feel like, yes, the skeletons aren't meant to be scary, but they're almost, unless there's a lot of them, it's almost like a second thought.
They're like flies.
But if you had a couple decently strong ones that also gave him a lot of life,
like,
it would be more of an incentive.
Another one
to take care of
a ghast. What does a ghast's actual stat look like?
But yeah, I mean, I can't get over, like, it's super creative in terms of the direction, especially the little bit that I know about the Gasha-Dokuro. It is a unique approach to it.
I got 36. They're a little bit more, but it's a target Creature.
And it doesn't really miss anything either. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really
paralyze. Yeah, gas at the very least will paralyze you if they hit you. But then again, it's only a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, which is probably a cakewalk for most of these people at this point.
Yeah. So I would have to change up. I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, that's the other thing too. There's not actually a lot here. Like, I mean, like that we've talked about a lot of different ways to do it, but there's not really a lot of things to change. So it would take a little bit of balancing, a little bit of that. We do need to fix up and change, like actually like figure out how to do an actual ranged weapon.
Yeah, like not only the range, but even the melee weapon attacks. I'd want to clear those up a little bit. I
still agree with you that the headbutt should be the description for Shatter and Slam. Man, headbutt, what if it turned into Spit Tooth?
Oh.
And basically was like a boulder size. Because I mean, you think about how big the head's supposed to be, that would basically be like a boulder being shot at you.
I mean,
almost. Yeah. Oh my god! Basically, I mean, I'm assuming D&D has a trebuchet or something. Like it probably has like a catapult. So So how about that? Like turn headbutt, if you want a ranged weapon, turn it into like Spit Tooth, and it has like 36 teeth upon summoning. That it can, basically has 36 ammo or something like that. And then it would just be able to spit, up to like 120 feet, and it's essentially like a catapult damage. Because I feel like that would be about as big as a rock that it can do.
Doesn't say what damage it does. I found trebuchet.
Or tribute, yeah.
Powerful catapult throws a payload before tribute.
Is the ammo listed separate for the damage? Is it based kind of like an arrow? How it has?
It might be.
It might be the payload itself.
It might be, yeah.
But that would be kind of cool. I wouldn't mind having it be like where it could just literally launch a tooth at you.
Yeah, because a lot of it's talking about like barrels of sewage and like other random things that you can throw. But okay.
So yeah, I think that could also just be kind of cool that it just spits teeth at you as a ranged attack.
But then it would only have a limited number of them.
Exactly.
Unless they recharge.
Or you can have recharge. I don't mind having ammo, like, just to give it like 60 teeth and just be like, that's how much it has. So it's going to spit teeth at you. That'd be kind of interesting.
Wild. I don't think it's going to use
quite a mouthy attack. Yeah, talk about vicious mockery on a whole new level.
Oh my god.
It could have shark teeth.
Regen teeth.
It could just sit there and have multiple layers of
That's true. That's true.
It could just be Hawk 2 in your teeth. That's
wild.
Hawk teeth in him.
Hawk teeth in him. Goodness gracious. That's not disturbing.
No, not at all.
Oh, God bless.
Turn it into the undead hillbilly. So yeah, no, I am really happy with the idea and the creativity behind it. I just think that the end result just doesn't sit quite right.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's not far. You know what I mean? Unlike some of the other ones that aren't building a picture, all of this stuff works towards something. I just don't see the end result yet. You know what I mean?
You don't see it manifesting. Like, where it's at. It's like what the picture could/should be, but it's just hasn't materialized yet. I feel that. I do.
I mean, wording is just more personal preference, but your phrasing and formatting isn't wrong, Cosmic. I mean, most of your math is on point. Aside from the saving throws that we think are a little bit low, most of all of this works for the areas like your hit points to armor class work, all of your your immunities and resistances, like it all, again, they work together. It reads like it's part of the same pamphlet, but I don't know what book I'm reading. It's like I'm like, all of this is part of one chapter, but it's not in any book that I know of.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just adding a little bit more clarity to how it works, kind of like with the weapons and some of the abilities, and ensuring that the way that it goes about being implemented is something that we can actually reliably use, and it feels like it makes sense for the situation. There's a couple of points, like I said, majority of what's here is freaking good and decent and is exactly what we want it to be. It's just being able to articulate, all right, exactly how does how does the body work versus the core? Exactly how do these attacks go about hitting their targets? Exactly how do you want to be able to use these legendary resistances or use these legendary actions? Like how do you want them to manifest in the game?
Because I will say, like, the whole core part, like, now that we've like fully gone over it, now kind of stepping back and imagining handing this to somebody new, I feel like the biggest like letdown almost out of the whole thing was we got to the core and the core didn't do anything. Like, the core wasn't different. The core wasn't like its own entity. It had its own stats.
Yeah.
But like, again, it has more intelligence than this thing does. It has more dexterity than this thing does, but it doesn't have an ability that uses those stats. It doesn't have anything that calls to it. So while it's a weak point, it's not really its own entity. And I think that's where I got lost a little bit, is it kind of was just like, oh, okay, we have this body, we have all this stuff, and now there's going to be this second thing, and it's just a weak point. It's just a
new target for you to hit.
End the fight sooner with less HP or with less XP. And again, it's kind of hard to imagine, why would we care about XP after the BBEG? You know what I mean? Like, if it's all about killing it, like, yeah, there's a lot of pieces where I'm like, even working on the lore a little bit and figuring out, like, why does this thing get summoned? Is there only one that can ever be summoned, right? Where does it come from? Where does it, like, I'm thinking of, like, you know how Bleach, how they have those, I forget what they're called, but like the giant like the giant death creatures from the other world that come through the cracks. Not like those, yeah, there was the hollows, but it was like the other one.
Oh, super big
yeah.
I do remember.
In the very
that.
beginning, it's like the first season, that big one like poked his head in.
Yep.
And then
he had to repel that guy.
And then he just kind of went back, and then then they're from like a different, like realm, right, where they have to like cut the fabric of reality to let them come in. I was thinking, like, I'm imagining that, like, that's where this thing comes from. You summon it from there, and giving it even like a thing where it's like, when summoned, it's drawn somewhere, or it needs to feed on fear, and like, just give me another thing as a DM. Because like, when I think of creating a creature, right, like, I don't want to, when I create homebrew, I don't try to create things that are telling a DM how to use it, like in terms of, this is the story you have to be telling, and this is who has to introduce them. Like, I'm not trying to give them the plot book. When I try to create something, I try to look at it from the point of view of, can this thing be dropped into anyone's campaign? Not necessarily where they're at, right? It might be a mountainous setting or a desert setting, but can any DM just be able to say, hey, I like what this can do, and I like what kind of encounter this will have. Can I drop this in without having to build my own story around it? And sometimes it's easy when you're like, hey, these are from this plane of existence, and they come through here looking for mortals to feed on fear. Just that's enough that almost any DM can take that. But then when you say they follow a certain god and they can only come through with this item that doesn't exist in D&D, like, that's when it becomes a little bit too more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So with this, it's like, there's a cool creature here, but as a DM, like, I'm not really being given a whole lot. I'm being given a cool creature, but I have to do so much
to
make it work in my realm, because I'm not really given any guidance in that direction, and the abilities itself don't tell the story. Like, they don't tell me what this thing is used for. It's literally, this could have been the 9th level summon spell, and I would feel better about it. Because if this was literally just a 9th level summon spell where you just summon a giant skeleton, this would feel a lot more like a spell. It's a kind of a one-shot pony. You cast a spell, this thing comes out, and
it's big and scary, and it does this stuff.
It has a lot of health, it has a lot of AC, it has a lot of damage, and it can scream at people. Like, that feels like a spell. It's very straightforward, but this is a creature, something that you kind of have to summon, but it's also a creature. Like, I just feel like it's almost like using a stampede of animals that you're not really in control of, but you're using it to your advantage.
Right.
Like, you just said, hey, I made a stampede to go through this town so I could destroy the town. That's kind of what this feels like, is you summoned a stampede, but it's just a stampede. It makes sense. There's a bunch of animals, and those do damage, and those do this.
There's no lore behind the stampede. There's no reason.
But there's no picture behind it. It's not one creature. It's just a random effect of animals that gets the job done. And I see what you're doing, but the picture, it's just a blur of stuff happening. So if that's better analogy,
I get you.
I feel like this could have been if you would have said this is just a 9th level spell, I probably would have been way more approving. It just as a creature, as something that we want to put in, especially late in the game. Yeah, I feel like we need more.
Fair enough.
All right. But again, it's not unbalanced. It's just, yeah, it's not unbalanced. It's just ineffective. How about that?
Sure.
Like it's ineffective
for what
plot
it's
point,
describing
it's
that it does.
what I would call like an engaging or an entertaining encounter. But it's all here. Like we have a complete picture. We have something that works. I just don't think any of us are excited to fight it. Because even like going back on what Pokéniner was saying, like a lot of the things that we're picking out that we may not like about it, it's more of a, I'm not seeing this as, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this is broken. I just look at it going, I don't want to fight that, and I don't want to run it as a DM.
Yeah, I'd walk in the room and then walk right back out.
And that's it. It's not like it's bad. It's just, if I have the choice, I would not choose it. So what does that mean? Personal preference.
Sure.
Like I said, even with what Pokéniner was saying, like a lot of those ideas are just trying to make it more appealing. I think all of the things that we were saying isn't making it better. I think it was making it more appealing and rewarding. I think is all we were really, I think that's, because again, a lot of the times we try to make things better, in our opinion, we try to balance it out to make it fit.
Yeah.
This isn't unbalanced to where it won't fit. I just don't know who would want to use this. As my personal experience, I don't know when and how to apply this to how I would make it fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but I do love the idea. So Cosmic, no, you're probably not going to get tanked that much, because again, it's not a useless item. It is very creative. It's very unique. It's new. It's not a one-to-one replica of something that we've seen before.
No,
it's definitely nothing that we've seen before. And it's going in a good direction, unlike other builds that we've seen.
With it.
Yeah, because a lot of other builds we've seen either go into dead ends where we kind of see like this isn't going anywhere, or they're so far off the mark that it's like basically scrap it, start over. This is neither of those. This is, you're on the road, we just don't know where it's leading, but you're on the right road. You're on the right path to get this there. It's just in its current state, I don't know how to apply it and how it would be entertaining. But I think it can get there. I definitely think it has a lot of benefit. And it does make me really want to rethink how I do my large monster encounters. Because I feel like, I'll be honest, I feel like I'm pretty basic when it comes to my like large monsters. Because you think just, big, slow, lumbering, lots of damage. Like I do like to change it up, like, like with certain kind of tactics or, group stuff. But this is really making me like rethink the pieces of a large, because a lot of times you do a large creature and you're like, okay, well, like a giant, they'll have like a stomp and like a melee attack with their club, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is making me think like each piece of a creature, the bigger you get, the more each piece is substantial, right? Like for a monk, yeah, your fists and your feet are two completely different weapons, right? There's versatility in that. But overall, that's not as big of a deal. But when you go to the size of a city, when you're this big and you are 15 times the size of anyone around you, your individual punch and your individual kick are way bigger, different assets than the human who uses a punch and a kick. Because, in terms of versatility and usage, they're about the same, right? Speed wise, like from a normal person, like speed wise and usability. But when you're that big, I imagine that each piece of you is its own entity, its own unit.
Yeah.
Right. Again, kind of like when you're walking around dragging yourself, every time you touch the ground to drag yourself, that's a unit of you. I'm not saying it's an entity that it's own
separate.
Thing, but when I'm this giant body and I have to move and I put my hand down to move, that hand is stuck to the ground. I can't lift it up because I'm moving myself. Which means it's now a new vulnerability. So it's making me think of like when I do these large encounters, maybe I need to start looking at like, a lot of people talk about like dragon encounters, and you might be able to role play that you've damaged the wing to ground it. But do DMs really separate out the wing is a piece? It has a function, and if it's gone, that function is gone. It's not just a role play device, but it's a piece of the puzzle. And I think that this is what this is kind of inspiring me to do, is not just go, yes, of course it has wings and you can take them down, but when I build the encounter, make those wings a piece, like something that I have to control separately. And if that gets damaged, that affects the rest of the build. So it's just making me realize that the approaching of these kind of builds, I think is, not something that D&D teaches us to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't really show us how to approach the large creature. Because, I mean, it teaches you how to do like large combat and multi-combat. But outside of giving you large creatures, it doesn't really work with the idea that large creatures have layers to them, right? I don't think D&D really even gives DMs the opportunity to talk about, like, how do you evolve a battle to have layers or levels to the battle, other than making the BBG run away and then coming back stronger later.
Yeah.
You know, how many DMs have been taught, or how you know, what supplements teach you to like have armor come off as you go through the battle.
That's a really good ADMG idea.
Oh yeah, perfect, thank you. So with all of that being said, Cosmic, I think you're on the road to getting something really spot on, like creative here. I just think right now it falls short of being rewarding for both player and DM. So with that, it's going to be a 6 though. Like it's not, again, it would probably end up being more like a 5, but I do have to give it the inspiration point. Like it probably would have hurt his score a little bit more. But again, it's making me realize that there's a lot more to large creatures than just big power. I think breaking it down into individual components is something that I'm going to take away from this.
100%. No, I love it. That sounds perfect.
So there you go, Cosmic. We're going to get that one a 6 out of 10 for the Gasha-Dokuro. And I'm sure Kage will be very happy to give you your average.
Yes. I want to make sure my stuff is like actually working properly, and this is updating. Okay, yeah, that looks accurate. So you, Cosmic, are still at a 7 average. If you want your specific average, you are at a 6.67, but that gets rounded up to 7.
Yeah, we don't do the points values.
But yeah, still got a sweet average. I love it. This was very cool. I honestly, even after putting this together and like the work that I did, I wasn't 100% sure what to expect. Like I had like kind of a general idea. I knew there was different parts. I knew they had some like legendary actions and things like that. But like how you put it together, how everything kind of works together, like it's very cool. Like I am surprised at how much inspiration I drew from this.
Right.
You know, and like how much I like what it can do. You know, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you and I both can do with this kind of stuff, how we can like evolve, you know, these types of combat and things like that. So
being able to take away, because I mean, I was definitely expecting, just with the small little bit that we had initially, I was definitely expecting a lot more mobility in terms of the attacks and just in general, like the speed and everything. I was expecting this to be much more of a, I honestly was expecting more of a complicated fight, not a complicated build. But I was expecting this to be much more of a, not a puzzle, but a much more, you have to do this for so long, then you have to do this for so long, then you got to do this, and then the fight's over.
Got you.
Not quite layered like what we were talking about, where there's stages, but I was definitely kind of expecting this to be much more of a, he's big and strong, but once certain things happen, it gets easier, you know, like over time kind of thing. And that's the other thing too that I think builds like this could have in terms of like homebrewing, is when you create large creatures like this, right? You could almost get to a point to where instead of staging it as in the physical battle changes, you know, the armor changes, or there's a weak point now that shows up, or anything else like that. I think one thing that we can do, and we should encourage during like creations like this, is even setting up stages for the DM. So not so much in-game stages like, oh, you've done so much damage, this piece of armor falls off, now they're easier to hit. But imagining like you write it into the encounter to where, hey, here's this creature, and once it hits 50%, it starts going after the most powerful enemy. Or as soon as if it ever takes more than 30 points of damage in one turn, it will target the last person
the person that did that damage.
Like creating things that will trigger how you roll with it, right? Like how you control it. That's something that I don't see very often. Like you can see things that will happen at different stages. You know, if they get too much damage, different effects will take place. But actually adjusting how it operates, that's one thing that I would really be really curious to see and work on myself, is
sure
trying to be like, hey, if this is what happens, then this is how you act. And then if this, so not just triggers, but like just whole shifts, you know, aggroing or running away. Like if it gets too, you know, away. So just do these things that would like just kind of change up how players, because again, I think most players are used to just these battles that go till the death, right? Everyone's just used to no one leaves until they're dead. It would be really cool to add these like personality traits to where at certain stages the boss is going to do something different. That's not the I'm staying here till the death, right?
Right.
All right, so let's see. That's a question for you.
Yeah, no, I'm working on that.
All right, so other than that, that brought us to over 3 hours. Not too bad, not too bad. It's a good item. Yeah, so I think that we're gonna call it for today. We don't have a specific topic yet. I think we still have a couple that we're mulling around for Friday, and then will give me some time to do some research. So we will keep you guys updated. If we get that figured out before stream, we'll post it in Discord. Otherwise, if no, we already went over all of that. Yeah, no, I guess that was all the other devs. I think we can just call it there. So yeah. That's going to be us for the rest of the night. If you guys did enjoy this and you have any homebrew of your own that you want to submit to us, you can do that via the Discord. I'll pop the Discord link in the chat one more time. Also, if you guys want to follow us on YouTube, TikTok, anywhere else like that, if you want to, you know, like, subscribe, and do all that stuff, you can follow us on any of the social medias. Link for all of our social medias is also in chat right now as well. So yeah, we really enjoyed this. Cosmic, thank you so much for another fantastic submission. We will definitely get to what looks like the Chronicles of a Forgotten Age is going to be your next one.
The re-review.
Oh, that's going to be another re-review. Okay.
Yes, this is one of the ones he submitted a while ago, and he's given us some updates and a couple of changes to it.
All right, I think we do have a new process that we want to roll out for re-reviews, how we're going to approach that. So we'll definitely.
But that's not next week's. That's his next.
Yeah, his next one. So we'll get on to that one. And then this Friday, we'll let you guys know what our deep dive topic is. We've already done our community stream, so we'll get that poll out to you guys soon. What is next Monday's item?
Next Monday's item, which sadly I will not be here for, unfortunately, but it is the Swindler by Desmar Sama.
Ooh, another subclass.
Yes, another subclass. Right. Let me see if I can determine. Actually, no, it is not a subclass. It is a background.
Oh, okay, cool.
It is a background. Yeah, I don't know if we've actually reviewed a viewer submitted background. I know we've done some
first.
We've definitely done some D&D Beyond ones, but
yeah, that's gonna be interesting. That's gonna be a hard topic to do by myself.
See, I was curious now if you would like, because I put that in there just to mix up like the submission types we had been receiving, because we've been getting a lot of subclasses. So I can play around with that if necessary.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll probably be fine. I mean, we could probably do a whole. I could probably do a whole bit off of that just fine. It's just
okay.
Yeah, I just have a feeling like that would be a much better topic with both of us. But
fair enough.
It happens. It's gonna happen. That's how stuff happens.
So scheduling and lives work out, sadly.
Yep. All right, y'all. Well, thank you everybody for showing up. I know it was so crazy. Like the chat was dead, and then suddenly there was like 5 people.
We blew up
in chat. So you guys were all great.
I love it. I love it.
I mean, I don't even remember. I know Lucifer and Aki were here for a while. Cosmic, obviously, Hecate, Pokeniner, Sinister, was it Serotonin?
Yep.
And someone else showed up way early on. It was like way in the beginning. There was someone
Hoilepa was here for a little bit.
Hoilepa was here for a little bit. Marty was here. There we go. Marty was here. That's right. And I see Soul not in the chat, but I see Soul.
No, Soul was chatting for.
Oh, did I miss that? I think
second.
Soul and Marty have the same color, so I always miss them. They both have long names, so I don't necessarily catch them all. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll be back on Friday, and then I will be back next Monday, but Kage will be out. And then we will just continue as normal. Keep an eye out on the Discord for those polls coming up for next month's community stream, and also for updates on the Misfit Gamer Towers wall. I've started painting. I've gotten the base layers done. So hopefully this week I will finish up the top layer of the darker color, and then I can clean up and we will be done. So yeah, I'm really excited to reveal that. But yeah, check out the Discord for more pictures. Otherwise, I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. I hope you guys have a fantastic week ahead of you. That's gonna be us, guys. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.